Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Thoughts from the Movies.
Welcome back, Josh.
Thanks! Jesus fucking Christ.
Way to beg for it.
Right? I had to, wait.
Yeah.
I had to beg for it. I don't like begging.
All right, I muted Josh's mic already. We're 30 seconds into the show. I'm just. Do you guys really want him back? Is this really what we're doing here? This is what we're doing? Okay,
I
cool.
miss him.
I had to ask. Okay, here we go. Josh, you're unmuted.
Live from the Union Fitness Studios located on the North Shore of Pittsburgh, Union Fitness is more than a traditional gym. It's a place where you can come together.
Oh no, everyone has their hats.
Tell me more.
And transform yourself inside and out with a variety of classes based around fitness, yoga, strength, and performance training. At Union Fitness, they believe it is their duty as your humble narrator to hold themselves and their gang members to a higher standard.
What?
They practice what they preach and uphold the values that
Should I
make
mute it
Union
again?
Fitness the community that it is. Go to unionfitness.com today and sign up for a consultation. Through Union, there is strength.
Who's in a gang? The
Everybody at
people that
Union
go to the
Fitness.
gym are in a gang?
Yes.
They're gonna love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's an appropriate transition to our the movie that we're doing tonight,
True.
so it works.
That was, my humble narrator.
Do you think that's why he did it?
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
This.
Oh yeah, no,
I don't
totally
believe it at all.
perfect
You
You
transition.
thought I just
I don't believe
decided that we were in a gang?
Very
All right.
smooth.
Well, fuck
Very
it.
smooth.
Here we are. Today's film.
Yes.
Are you happy that you picked it?
I picked A Clockwork Orange for this week's show, and I really did not know what we were getting into. And,
Everyone hated Lucky Number 11 until Clockwork Orange
That's
came along, and now it's the
absolutely true.
greatest movie ever.
That's absolutely true.
Austin is the only one who had seen A Clockwork Orange before this week, and it just recently came on Netflix in November, so when I saw that, it was interesting. It was on my list of films for a long time to watch, and then I just never really got around to it, and I took it off because I'm like, I don't really want to watch it, but then we needed a movie, and it was on there, and it's like, we haven't done Kubrick yet, so
We have
let's check that out, because it's something no one's seen, and it's one of his more well-known films, if not one of his more well-liked films. So, yeah, Clockwork Orange, it's intense, man. Like, Kubrick is Kubrick, and any of his movies are always going to be a little bit off the beaten path. I mean, he's regarded as one of the best filmmakers of all time, very
Yes.
influential to many people.
Yes.
But this one was certainly it could be considered polarizing. It touched on a lot of controversial things. What did you guys think just off the bat before we get into our subject?
I don't
mean,
think Austin's talked yet. Austin!
Not.
What did you think? Because you're also the only member of this party that has read the book.
It's true. It was a long time. I want to incent that it has been a long, long time since I have read the book. But the book inspired me to actually watch the movie, and the movie did not disappoint. This is just like the book. It is a very, very rough monologue into the mind of a very, very sick man and how this basically futuristic world works. And I love this actually more this time watching it than I did the first time.
Okay.
I'll say it.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's Kubrick, so people are going to love it for certain reasons, and then people are going to be a little bit iffy on it for some reasons. But you are the only one that's seen it, so we're all going to have a new perspective on it tonight, which is really exciting. Let's take a look at some of the topics we're going to talk about for this crazy Kubrick piece of cinema tonight. First, we're going to start off with, how's that orange, Josh?
I'm doing great, mate. Thanks for asking.
All
About
right,
to
you
do
really,
some
really
ASMR.
enjoying that one.
Yeah, definitely not an orange too. I found that out the hard way last night.
Oh, is it tangerine?
This is about the same size as a mandarin, which
Okay.
it's not a.
A mandarin orange. But very, very appropriate again with the theme tonight because of the poster design, which we'll talk about at some point. But, okay, categories tonight. First, Kubrick. Is he artsy-fartsy or just kind of a weirdo? We're going to discuss.
Hearing you say artsy fartsy makes me happy.
I
don't know,
felt
it
weird. It felt weird
just-
coming out of my mouth, but
it
I'm
makes me
reading.
happy.
I'm
He's a little
pulling the
too
Ron
proper for
Burgundy.
artsy-fartsy.
I'm reading what's on the
I
front.
am Ron
Ron
Burgundy.
He's artsy-fartsy. Like, you know. Okay, so we're going to talk about Kubrick a little bit in general to start. Our next category after that, we're going to talk about that rape scene. That rape scene? Like, you know, we'll talk about it, I guess. But of the many controversial scenes in this movie, one kind of stands out more than all the others. So we're going to talk about that one in particular as Josh feeds Zach very sexually.
I turned their camera
appropriately.
off for a second. There was a lot going on there.
Yeah,
and it
there are
just-
children watching the show. No, next category. After the rape scene, we're going to talk about one of Austin's interesting ideas, society versus choice, and some of the ideological themes behind this movie and free will and sort of oppression and certain things that go into those aspects. In the middle of the show, we're going to do a new segment we started last week that we had a ton of fun with. It was called Better Than, Worse Than, which is we're going to take we have about 6 or 7 similar movies, 2 Clockwork Orange, that we're going to all go around and decide which is better than or worse than each other. Not necessarily Kubrick movies, but just similar movies. So that was fun last week. We'll do that again.
For sure.
After that, we have Josh's category, right? We're going to talk about some of the sound design of the movie, so the music. He's a big music guy, and some of the other sound that went into the production of the movie. After that, we're going to talk about some of the revolutionary techniques of the film, right? I mean, Kubrick is a master filmmaker, and not only did he influence a lot of people, but he was renowned for some of the ways that he made his movies. And then we're going to end with our usual. Then we're going to do. Then we're going to do. Is this the greatest, weirdest movie ever? Austin wanted to discuss, so we're going to throw that in there at the end.
Great question.
It could be. It is both great and weird in its own way, I guess.
What the fuck happened to my category?
I'm
got
not
snubbed?
I'm not controlling the
Which
board
one was
here.
yours?
Wow.
Which one was yours?
Josh comes back and I get snubbed.
Which one was
I
yours?
see how it is.
Which one was yours?
This is the end.
They got replaced by better than worse than and not put below. So here's what we're gonna do.
No, it's fine. No, seriously, please.
Choose.
Please, I had nothing great to say.
This is
I
the
just
Yeah,
wanna
we'll
say
throw
that
it
as
in
soon
there.
as
Yeah,
Josh
we can
comes
get it in
back,
there, of
you know,
course.
like,
I love that that's just happening on screen.
Yeah, exactly where it's meant to be. All right, well, so we'll throw that in there in the meantime.
Oh wait, sorry, I gotta. There we go.
And then we'll end the show with our usual overrated, underrated when we talk about the actors in the movie. So that's kind of our lineup. Lots to talk about, lots to digest. As there we go, graphics get rolling.
Sorry, Zach, it's in there.
I
Perfect.
didn't really intend for any of this to play out the way it just did.
I don't think anybody did. No.
Just wanted to be some shtick real quick.
But all right,
Producer's a wild card.
I apologize.
alrighty.
Austin, you
Let's-
couldn't see any of that, but it
This
was great.
show was so much better from LA. I swear to God.
It was better when you were in LA too, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, so let's get into it though, boys. Clockwork Orange, directed by Stanley Kubrick, 1971.
Kubrick.
Yeah, Kubrick. Many of his films are well known the world over, right? 2001: A
Correct.
Space Odyssey, The
Yes,
Shining, Full Metal
yes,
Jacket.
Yes.
You can go on and on, but
Keep going.
let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Kubrick as a director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he is polarizing to some people in this room. So, Josh, this is your category. Why don't
Sure.
you go ahead and lead us into it, buddy?
So here's the deal, and we're going to talk about a little bit more later on the exact revolutions that he has made in filmmaking in general. But he impacted not only future directors or future writers or future editors, because he was all of those things, a true Renaissance man, but he also made technological advances in lighting, in lens design, in camera design. The actual Steadicam is a Kubrick invention. I mean, there's so many things that he lent to the industry that you can't ignore him as a director and being arguably one of the best ever.
We did have a comment come in that says, y'all talk about that one scene yet from Smalls, which I would assume fits into our second category.
Go back to the categories.
Yeah, just for the simple sake, I think
That rape scene.
it's
We did not talk about that scene yet.
He might be talking about the torture or the
there's a lot of scenes that fall into this category.
oh shit, what's it called with the eyes?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into it.
Aversion therapy.
Nice.
So anyway, Kubrick.
I
We'll
thought it
get
was-
there,
I
Smalls.
thought it was a version of therapy.
Yes, you're correct. What did I say?
No, you said aversion therapy. I
Yeah.
just thought it was a version of therapy. Damn it.
No, aversion therapy, yeah.
Did I say the right thing or did
You
you say
said
the right
thing.
Okay,
I suck
awesome.
at this movie. This movie blows.
Dude, it does blow.
All right, back to Kubrick.
Kubrick
Yes.
is the man as far as influence on the film industry and what he gave to the industry and all that kind of stuff. It's very important. It needs to be talked about. However, I do not believe him as a storyteller is as off the wall as everybody gives him credit for.
Off the wall and what's like weird or just like super talented,
Yeah.
amazing?
No. I think he's super talented storyteller, but I think everybody kind of, particularly with this movie, points out how weird it is. How like, oh, it's like this anti-culture, like it's this, whatever. Well, it was a book,
Mhm.
and it was a book written in the '60s. And Austin, what other famous books were written in the '60s?
Oh, there's a lot of books that are written in the 60s, fella. There's a good bit of books written there. There's a whole bunch of them.
That might be the best solo cam transition I've ever seen.
Okay, so Brand New World, Doors of Perception, Aldous Huxley, right? It's the acid movement, right? So Pink Floyd is creating some of the most like Piper at the Gates of Dawn. That's happening in the '60s, okay? All this like deep looks at society and experimenting with drugs is happening in the '60s. Kubrick, a child of the '60s, because he started in this industry when he was 17, okay, grew up being heavily influenced by those works. So things like A Clockwork Orange or any of the other, like Space Odyssey was a book before, right? Shining was a book before. He's just a reader. He's just a guy who likes to read and was reading popular works at the time. He's not weird. He's mainstream.
Okay, interesting take. Zach, Austin, Derek, who agrees and who thinks that he is a little bit more weird than we give him credit for?
Austin, you go, and then Zach, you go, and then I'll go after that if that's cool with that order.
All right. I think that his ability to, I'm gonna go on this. I'm gonna agree with Josh on this. I think that his ability to transcribe the words that are put in front of him of books and then make his own little thing out of it, in a sense of what he thinks, what we think might be weird, he might think is normal. But I suggest that this is more of like a base level. Like he's just trying to bring in all of the art and influential pieces in his brain to try to incorporate a good movie.
Okay.
Yeah, just doing like a quick look at other books that were from the 60s. I think it speaks like his choice of, taking this to film speaks to like his interest in his character. Like I saw Catch-22 and To Kill a Mockingbird, both came out in the 60s, and
Yep.
I can't fucking imagine a Kubrick To Kill a Mockingbird. Like I think that would be horrendous.
Godfather, written in the '60s.
Yeah, Where the Wild Things Are.
Yep.
I wouldn't hate a Kubrick Where the Wild Things Are,
That would be
but
cool.
That would be cool.
I think he's mainstream in the regard of he's taking these popular works from that time, but I think he's counterculture / kind of
That's
weird
what I've been
for
trying to come up with. Thank you.
his choice of what he brought to film.
Sure.
Okay, Derek?
So I guess my question off this kind of gives away some of my director stuff, but is Quentin Tarantino weird or artsy fartsy?
No, he's fucking weird.
Yeah, so I think that's where this bro is the weirdest. Like Kubrick is the weirdest balance of that, because it's like I was trying to watched the movie and like looking around, and Zach and I talked about this on the drive, like looking through the movie to try to find things that seem to be a bit more. There's a reason they're there. Like there's a reason that picture's there. There's a and like some of them yes, but most of them no. It felt like. What can I do to throw up all of these super cringy things that are going to make you as the viewer feel awkward into the scene? So for me, like, he's a weirdo because of that.
Sure.
Like, he's a nice mix of both. And this movie, like, it's an attempt to be artsy, and I think it's an attempt to bring art into the weird factor. Just like the only thing that I really bring up on all these shows is the I tiptoe to the window, the complex of like taking something that's supposed to be comfortable and putting it into an awkward situation to bring fear out. Is a lot in this, and for me, that makes him a fucking weirdo.
He's My Chemical Romance.
No.
Yes.
No.
He's
Don't.
weird, but easy to consume by masses.
I don't know that I'd say he's easy to consume.
Yeah, this was fucking
But
terrible. This was the
but
hardest
this
movie
is
I've
the
ever tried to
70s.
watch.
This is the 70s. Boobs were everywhere in the 70s. Like, there's just
Josh,
a
I hate to break
different-
it to you now. Boobs are also still everywhere, just
Yeah.
they're covered.
If you need help, I
Yeah.
can tell you where to find them.
Rolling red. What's good,
Instagram
brother?
accounts to follow.
I can lead you to some boobies.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Josh is talking about boobies. Rolling, no big deal. We're just talking boobies.
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, like, I think we think this movie's weird now because we're watching it in 2020, where we're so tightened up again that, like, we're closer to the actual 20s than we care to admit about how tight we are on sex and culture and all that kind of stuff. And this is written and created in a time where the doors were blown the fuck off of society for a while. And that's when this movie came out. So, like, the sad boys that we grew up with that, like, you know, had their, like, not, and I'm not even talking about emo kids. I'm talking about the kids who, like, loved A Clockwork Orange and were this character for Halloween and took it too fucking far. Like, you guys aren't actually into something super underground or counterculture. It's just what was culture at the time.
Yeah, I was telling Deke this on the way home that my buddy Ryan had read the book recently and hasn't seen the movie yet, and I was like, we all, when we were freshmen in high school, had a friend that by the time we were seniors was like a straight like heroin addict.
Sure.
And he had blacklight posters from Spencer's, and he wore Jimi Hendrix band tees that he bought at JCPenney's, and that guy loves this fucking movie.
Exactly.
This is that guy's movie.
Right.
This is that.
Right.
And Deke was like, yeah, and he'll tell you, like, you just don't get it, bro.
Right.
And I was like, no, like, I get it.
Right.
But, like, it's just not for me.
I just don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's that weird. I think it's just a shit movie.
But the one thing I thought was interesting, because the only other Kubrick movie I've seen is The Shining.
Mhm.
And from watching that documentary, like Room 237,
Yeah.
it talks about how meticulous it is, where, like, the positioning of, like, cans on shelves change. There's a poster of a guy
Yep.
skiing that is supposed to look like a minotaur, which leads to, like, the maze at the end. And so part of me was like, this seems so chaotic
Yep.
that it's hard to, like, think, like, is he really this masterful guy? But then part of me is also like, the parts that are chaotic are parts where he's, like, losing, like, he's, like, on this bender of ultra violence, and then the parts where he's in the hospital or he's in prison doing the therapy are not chaotic. And then I'm like, fuck, does this lead to his genius? Where parts of the movie are intentionally chaotic when he's immersed in this ultra violence. So, like, artsy fartsy or weird, like, I think he's still, like, a masterful director.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was one of the things that is probably most well known about him, is his meticulousness when it comes to filmmaking. I mean, when he was doing Eyes Wide Shut, which was the last movie he did with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, they finished shooting the movie for one of the actors, I believe it was Nicole, and she went back to the States, and then they needed to do a reshoot of a scene, or he called her back to England where they were shooting the movie in order to get her to tap on the glass in the scene just so it would have the same sound effect as it did before. Like, they didn't just record her tapping on glass in America and send it to England. Like, he flew her back there so she could literally tap on the exact pane of glass that he needed her to have the right sound. Like, that's the kind of guy that he was. I mean,
Right.
Kubrick might have been weird.
It's a logistical nightmare.
He might have been weird to, like, the general public, but he is truly a master craftsman.
He's Wells.
He was 100% in control of all his
Yeah.
movies. He knew exactly what he wanted, and
Yeah.
because the subject matter is a little bit,
Out there.
yes, controversial, polarizing, a little bit off-brand. I mean, his movies all did well for the most part at the box office, but they do deal with a lot of topics. Like
And this movie did do well at the box office.
yes,
Very
yeah, it
well.
did. I mean, his movies though they have common themes of being very examining psychological issues like rape. There's a lot of sexuality. Like
Yep.
Full Metal Jacket is a very psychologically dark movie in terms of how war affects your mind and things like that. So he explored a lot of topics that were very heavy and not the easiest pill to swallow. So he could be a little bit weird to some people, but he's also a genius.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about what you said about the time period. This is going to lead into our next topic here. So the time period, the movie came out in 1971. And so most people who have studied film history at all know that the 70s were the auteurs generation. It's when
Right.
Spielberg and Coppola and Lucas and
Yep.
all these people came onto the scene.
Spielberg and Kubrick, best buddies, in fact, canceled the projects they were working on to give the other one spotlights at times.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
like this whole crew, De Palma, like all these
Right.
guys were in the same crew together, and they all came up making their movies
Sick cocaine
in the
party.
70s. But what's
Why'd you look at me
interesting,
for that?
Just I knew you would laugh. I
did, but damn.
but what's interesting about the time though is that, like you were talking about, this movie deals with so many explicit topics, and it's interesting because right now in film we have the rating system, right? We have
Mhm.
PG-13, we have R, we have that. The precursor to that was called the Hays Code, which we hear about in film history, and some people might have heard about, but that went up until 1968. It was from the 30s until late 68. Really, it kind of started falling off in the mid-60s because no one was listening to it anymore. But it was very specific in the things that you could and could not show on film. It banned pretty much every explicit topic you could think of, like slavery, profanity, nudity, all of these things gone, like 30s through the 60s. Like you can't have a mainstream commercial movie show all this stuff. So when the Hays Code started to fall off in the mid-60s, all of these things started working their way into cinema, and it became more common to see these big action sequences that showed a little bit more blood or gore, like in Bonnie and Clyde when they get shot up at the end, or more sexually explicit movies or things like that that dealt with topics that weren't allowed to be shown before. And that leads us into that one scene of the movie, right? And when you say that one scene,
I'm singing in the rain.
A Clockwork Orange really is all about, not all about, but it's probably most well-known and what's the word? Infamous scene is the rape scene by Alex of the woman who him and his gang show up at her house.
Right. That or
and
the
her and her
aversion
husband.
therapy.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean when he has his eyes propped open, which is more of a sequence. But yeah, this one scene, and it was so controversial at the time because nothing like it had ever been shown before, and they don't even like show him physically raping her. Like it's the lead up to it, and then it's implied what happened.
Right.
And the reason I want to talk about this subject with you guys and get your opinions is this was so out there at the time, and nothing like this had ever been seen, at least not like in mainstream U.S. film culture. And at this point in our lives, in 2020, with how much we've been exposed to violence in film and the media, and sexuality
Yes.
in social media, and just all the marketing and advertising and all these things, have we become so desensitized where watching this scene doesn't really affect us? Because when I was watching it, like when he's singing and it's just like it felt to me I had no connection to it at all. Did you guys agree? Do you feel the same, that we've just become so far removed from that kind of stuff?
Austin?
I wouldn't necessarily say like completely desensitized. I mean,
Don't worry,
yes, you
there's
have
nothing
like
bad
certain
in this
elements
clip.
of everything going into movies we see today with obscenely amounts of like sexual content, drug use, suicide, everything of that nature. So when you say like it completely desensitized you don't really have any feeling to the scene, I mean it all depends.
Austin, hang on. Pause this. The clip, please.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, go back to the little egg chair. Who would shut the door on that thing? Why is there a door on the egg chair? Who's getting in there and shutting it? I'm sorry, Austin. Go ahead. That wasn't very.
I don't.
nice. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you.
I don't know. To me, maybe it looks like a sauna. I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe
maybe you're right.
It's an interesting one.
I think. Well, no, because you can see. that on like I don't think it's for people to get in because this is like a cloth thing, and I'm pointing the mouse at it for everyone at home. So sorry, but you can see the purple cloth, and then there's this white outside. I want to say that it serves a purpose. Like it looks like there might be a seat on that.
Oh, maybe it's
You know
supposed
what I
to
mean?
fold out
So
into
it-
a two-chair.
But the purple closes down.
Yeah.
In the future, we all have deprivation chambers.
There we go.
That
no,
must be
like,
what that is.
Because you can see her like not. She doesn't necessarily look like she would fit in it. It looks like that's to lean against when you're in it if you're not going that way. And then when it closes, because it does look like it is a different color than the wall. There was like a hump.
I see.
So
okay.
maybe it's some kind of
Thank you for explaining
douchey.
that.
I was staring at it while you guys were talking. I have no idea what you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
I was looking at the chair.
Yeah, the chair is so bizarre.
Yeah. So sorry, Austin. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, it all depends on like just the various amount of influences that come into the film like this. And I mean, we're all not like him, like the guy that's originally in this scene at the end experiencing like this when we see it, when he's like all jawed up and it looks like he's having a stroke when he finds out that, you know, it's the actual guy that's taking a bath. So we're not all like that. We're not like, you know, going crazy over the scene, but you know, it really depends on the person, man, because if you were, you know, not bringing anything into this or anything, but if you're in a person of inflicted, you know, with sexual assault or, you know, drug use or anything like that, yeah, it's going to leave an impression, man. But I wouldn't say, for me personally, I wouldn't say I was completely desensitized with that, even with all of today's media and everything being shoved down our throats of just how shitty the world is, because you always have to find that bright spot, honestly.
It's a great point, Austin. It definitely has a lot to do with your background as to how triggered you were.
Sure.
Me personally,
yeah.
not triggered at all.
Well, no, I think and I think it's more a commentary about the way the landscape looked at the time when this scene came out in 1970 versus our landscape now with the media. But Zach and Derek, what do you guys think about this specific?
I had mentioned to Zach in the car that the only other movie that I could think of off the top of my head that made me feel as detached in this current scene was The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Austin, I believe you've seen it. Yeah, it's traditionally, and I explained it to Zach, is the way that it's a family moving through where they used to, you know, the whole show is spoiler alert. A family's traveling through and their van breaks down in a town where they used to do nuclear testing, and now the people in the hills are deformed and they kill and rape anybody that comes through the territory. And the scenes are very graphic to the point where it's like I am just completely out of the mood. Like I do not cinematically. I use movies to get away, and I don't mind there being political. I don't mind there being racial. I don't mind there being injustice, like of any kind. Rape scenes for me, they're just the most tasteless thing in cinema. And I understand that it's a replication of real life and an understanding that actually happens. All those things. It made me just from the start of the movie be like, I'm just not gonna like this. And that's just personal stuff. It just was.
I was far more upset about all of the Children of the Corn than I was at any scene in this movie.
Okay.
I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Deke here. Like when I think before this scene is when they like come across the rival gang, and the rival gang's like about to like rape that chick on the stage. And as soon as I saw that, I was just like, I don't think this shit's for me.
Yeah.
You know? But
you
then
said in the text thread, give it 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
Yeah,
that is.
because I had said I was excited to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, in 10 minutes you won't be.
I was like, it's only 9 minutes and 54 seconds. This is a great movie.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah. But and one of the kind of talking about the whole thing we're talking about here is I was curious about why I felt like grossed out and uninterested in it. Like obviously like rape is like a serious subject and gross and all that, but like I'm pretty okay with like anything, you know, like I probably find a lot of things that are like, you know, not tasteful to be funny and shit like that. But this, I was just like, I don't like this. I'm not interested in this. You know, when they like cut the, you know, the front of her shirt and all that, and he's like got his like thumb like pressed up her ass, I was just like, you know, this is not for me. But granted, I have seen worse, well, not like worse, like, we've all seen some shit on the internet.
We've all seen Bud Dwyer kill himself.
Yeah, and I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind. There's a clip. It's like a YouTube video. It's called "We're Not Aiming for the Truck," and are you familiar?
No, but this I already don't like it.
It's from Toy
Yeah,
Story
no,
where
yeah.
Buzz is like carrying Woody and they're heading for the moving truck. And he's
Yep.
like, "Hey, like you passed the truck," and Buzz is like, "We're not aiming for the truck." And then it pans to one of the planes like crashing into the Twin Towers.
Wow.
I probably have laughed at that harder than I've laughed at anything I've ever seen. But 10 minutes into this movie, I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
This is distasteful.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, why, I don't know.
Well, that's an
Yeah.
interesting word, distasteful. And the scene we were talking about, or you just mentioned, where the rival gang is about to rape that girl in the auditorium, before this, there were certain people and certain film critics out there who didn't like that scene went on as long as it did before the Droog showed up.
Yeah.
And, it showed the whole process. And before the Droog showed up, which is when Alex and his company enter the arena, then it's like, why do we need to see so much of this? Did you guys feel that for a lot of this
Really
movie?
long
You're
amount
like,
of
why?
time.
You're
Yeah.
like, why are these scenes going so long? Why do we need to see as much of this as we're seeing? Did anyone have a sense of that with this scene in particular and some of the other more graphic ones of the movie?
It just made me look away for that time frame, and then whenever it stopped, I was like, okay, cool, I can come back. Like, it was just it very much the length of certain scenes. There's always a very clear purpose to why, and I believe that the length of these scenes was to make me feel awkward watching it. So I just didn't watch it until I saw the scene change,
Bingo,
which is, I mean, it is what it is. It's the same reason that politicians have 26 signs on the side of the highway because you remember their name. Like, there's a purpose behind everything that I consider stupid, and it's just like, all right, well, that scene's going to go on forever. I'll be back. I'm going to go get a beer or something.
Yeah, but did you not watch the scene because you were uncomfortable or because you just weren't interested in it?
I kind of was aware that there wasn't going to be something happening that was going to be altering to the storyline. Like, I felt aware that it's like when someone in a group of people that you're like kind of friends with one of them and it's all his friends and they're like, oh, like, cool shirt. And you're like, all right, well, he's obviously fucking with me. Like, I'm just not going to pay attention to you now. Like, fuck you. It's like I knew that they were like trying to make me feel awkward. So I was like, all right, fuck you. I'm just going to look away. I do want to get to a comment in a second, but I want Austin and Zach to comment on that before we get to Roland's comment, which I think was really good.
Yeah, no, I agree with that point, Deke, as I feel like the whole point of showing those scenes was just to show you how weird futuristic society is in shambles just based on the very ugly nature of humanity at that point. Because even the homeless guy, when they beat him up, I don't know if you have that scene or not, if you play it, like they were just like, there's no law and order anymore. Like everything is thrown into chaos. And essentially it just allows criminals to do whatever they want. And a lot of times when we view our society, we view it as like, oh, the man's coming down hard on us. The government's pressing hard, but all these cops are doing like what they need to do. And then you enter a different world where essentially there is no law and order and chaos. And this is the result, which is the complete. We'll get in touch with it a little bit when we go to my segment, but it's hard to look at it from like a half glass half full scenario. Like it's just weird, man. It's more uncomfortable than everything to watch these scenes, and I think that's what they're trying to brace in your head.
Right, and I think for me personally, and what inspired this whole segment is that I didn't feel very uncomfortable watching these scenes, and that's what I was curious about with you guys.
I think there is something interesting though that when I was pulling clips for the movie, I picked the ultra-violent scenes because I knew I could show it. But I didn't pick any of the rape scenes because I knew that wasn't going to fucking fly.
Yeah, I do want to get to, just before we move on because it involves that. Roland writes in, at the time, the rape scene and all the scenes of Ultraviolet were completely novel. American audiences hadn't seen anything like it. This kind of jump-started the home invasion films like Straw Dogs and The Last House on the Left. Also, Zach is the man. Word up. This isn't a movie to watch with mom and dad.
Exactly.
Actually, I would watch this with my dad because it would be like this super fucking deep conversation afterwards on the back porch as he smoked an entire pack of Marlboros.
I would love to see that conversation.
Right?
That would be amazing. Yeah.
While we're on the topic of this, I just wanted to say real quick that I sympathize with Deke, where like it made me uncomfortable, but also like I was uncomfortable because I knew what was happening. At that point, I was like, I don't have to like really pay attention to this. Like I know what's going on.
Sure.
But in the same regard of like, you knew you could show the ultraviolence but not the rape, is like, it's interesting for me. I know you guys said that it didn't really bother you that much, but it's interesting that like The Exorcist, you know, one of the most horrifying movies of all
Yeah.
time, people fainting in the theater. We're like, we could probably all watch The Exorcist and be like, I appreciate the filmmaking, I appreciate the story, I appreciate the visuals, but it's not scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it's an older movie. It's outdated to what we're used to.
Yep.
So I don't know for whatever reason, but I find it interesting that in the same regard here, we're like, I was so affected by
Yeah.
these scenes when it's outdated and nothing like compared to like the shit we see nowadays.
I think that's a great fucking point. Like, why can't we watch The Exorcist and be like, ha ha ha, the head spun?
Yeah.
But we're like, you know what? What's my phone doing right now?
Well,
Because that's easier.
Since then, in the last 40 years, we've been taken so far to the extreme with all that stuff. I mean, in terms of not only filmmaking capabilities, which has only enhanced the things that you can see in terms of the realism of violence and like the amount of sexuality that we see, like, you
on
know,
a daily basis.
yeah, but even like in movies now, a rated R rating will still get you. You know, you could see a lot of things in that for all these different topics that were like, you know, like Roland said, like we were talking about earlier, hadn't really been seen at the time. So not only was it new filmmaking techniques that were new and unseen before, but it was also topics that people had never seen before, and we've just seen so much more of it and in such more extreme fashions that I think it's why, like Zach said, you could watch The Exorcist now and just be like,
Yeah.
that kind of,
That's a good
you
point.
know, like that's makeup and like it's fine and I'm bored and what's my phone at and
Yeah.
everything. But it's interesting to think about that.
Very
So,
interesting. I like it.
great comments on that scene, guys. What do we got next? We're going to talk about, Austin wanted to talk about some of the themes of the movie. Austin, lead us into this category, bud.
Yeah, so this one is very interesting, right? This is society versus free choice, okay? And in this movie, we are presented with one where, you know, in a society of just conforming to what you're supposed to and doing that leads to bad choices. And then you have freedom of choice also leads to bad choices for this. For an instance, for freedom of choice, at the beginning when Alex and, you know, his gang and whatever are basically doing what they want, taking what they need, doing what they want, and essentially causing chaos through the entire like cul-de-sac. But then you have Alex when he gets caught. You know, he goes through this treatment, and you know he's essentially medically positioned now to whenever he has violent tendencies or sexual tendencies, or even even Beethoven tendencies, for instance. He experiences like a very very bad sickness that impacts him in making his decisions and how that works. So let me get your thoughts on this, guys. Is it better to be, in this case scenario of a movie, is it better to be in a landscape of freedom of choice when everything is handed to you? Or is it best to conform with this and let government and society kind of make your choices for you without ruining your life, essentially?
High School Musical did a song about this called The Status Quo.
That's true.
So just one.
That movie
Yeah.
also trash. Is that in our better or worse than? Because I
How
have
dare
some.
you.
That's
How
gonna
dare
take me a
you.
minute to figure that out.
I didn't think to compare High School Musical to A Clockwork
Well,
Orange.
Josh just thinks
but,
it's trash because he didn't get High School Musical.
That's
so.
true. I did
He's
not.
he's a Camp Rock guy. We all know
I
that.
am a Camp Rock guy.
He is. We did a show on it. He is.
Demi. What are you laughing at?
Vanessa Hudgens.
Demi.
Yeah.
Demi
That's
every
a
day.
sad way to live your life.
Demi every day.
It's Vanessa
I
Hudgens,
mean,
dude.
I've seen neither, but are we talking about Demi Lovato?
Versus Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah, Demi all damn day.
Okie dokie.
Poor Austin. Always,
I mean-
Austin. This is 2 for 2 in the show. He's been in the middle of like a really
Oh.
deep sentiment, and then
No.
everyone
Demi.
just like
Yeah,
Demi.
Zach.
Bring up
Still
Demi.
Demi.
Bring
Guy.
up Demi.
Still Demi.
And then bring up Lucy Liu again.
Welcome to my life.
Austin, I'm still with you, bud.
I mean,
I'm still with you.
she's very pretty. She is a beautiful, beautiful human. But this is Vanessa Hudgens.
No.
Bring up Lucy.
I don't even. This is. No.
Uh,
It's not even.
We're just-
Why is Gary Oldman there?
I don't know.
Getting
Gary
farther
Oldman.
and farther away.
I
We
don't
are
know.
oh, maybe she's dating Gary Oldman's
The show
son.
is
I don't know.
spiraling.
anyways,
out of
Austin,
control.
for me,
My choice is Demi Lovato. Society's choice is Vanessa Hudgens.
no, but back to your point, Austin. To reel it in.
Yep.
So it's societal versus, it's the conversation that when they're doing the like the showcase. I don't know the term, but the showcase of like, did he change? Whatever that is. It's basically like, no, this is not a real man because he has no choice, and it's he is not able to choose his decisions there because they have changed him to to follow society's tropes. And I think that the conversation then comes into there are a lot of things that I can't appreciate this film, and one of them is the conversation about do humans have free choice? And I think that maybe I thought too much in that scene, but for me it came from a place of like, certain people in this universe, in this world, have free choice and can do whatever they want to do, and don't really have the consequences until they are caught. And they are just, there's no like taught to be changed or anything. No, and I get that that's like life, but they are not taught to be changed. They are physically forced to be changed to society. So it's not even so much
white men.
Well, I mean, yeah,
That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But in this, it's not that they are getting coached to be better people. He really doesn't understand why he's supposed to be a better person. It's literally saying we are eliminating options from your life to make you a good person. And I think that gets to the core of him being an evil person. Is because they didn't change him. He says he's fixed. They didn't change him. They just eliminated certain options in his life to make him comply to society. So I think that for you to have a free will society that is self-sustaining, you have to have choice, but the society itself will always want you to fall within the rules. So that was the only thing I liked about this movie.
Yeah. If I could jump in real quickly, because I just got Roland's comment on this, and I like what he said. He said, if I understand the topic correctly, Alex's ability to choose was taken away from him after the experiment.
Yes.
He is the human equivalent of Pavlov's dog, completely conditioned to act against his natural impulses.
Correct.
What was the cat?
Yeah.
Schrodinger's cat.
Schrodinger's cat.
The only two
Is it
things
in the
I
box?
remember. It's always in the box,
Are you sure?
Down on the box.
and it's never in the box.
What's in the box?
Zach.
So, I think this is kind of complicated, and let me explain.
Yes.
So let's first talk about like 2020
Okay.
and the idea of society and free will and like government getting involved in this. 'Cause that's ultimately
Alright.
what we're talking about
might need a
in this
beer.
instance, right?
Here we go.
So, like right now, Pennsylvania, today's date, we have, the government saying you need to wear a mask at all times. In your home, if you have other people, coming to your house and such. If you travel outside the state, you have to quarantine within your house. You have to get tested, blah, 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 blah. Which makes sense because there's a global pandemic. It's understandable. But also at some point, it's intrusive in the idea that, like, as human beings on this planet, we have an innate desire or impulse to act in our own self-interest. Like, yes, some people don't think the virus is real, some shit like that. But like, if you're an elderly person and you have a compromised immune system, you're not going out maskless anyway. You don't necessarily need the government to dictate and, have, this is a terrible reference, but like the government to have their boot on your neck for you to live, a regular life. In regard to the film, though, we're talking about the government, interfering with his life, but he's raping and murdering people. So in that regard, like, it's hard to argue against, this external influence on him to curb those traits, because those traits are innately destructive to having like a cohesive society. So
Yes.
I think
Mhm.
it's I understand the argument we're having, but I think that it is valid in the regard to what we're talking about specifically with Alex.
I love everything you just said.
But
Austin, this was a great topic. And I'm at a crossroads right now if I want to further dissect how this movie further applies to today's exact scenario, or if I want to tie back into the movie.
Well, tie back into the movie
Okay,
because we don't want
alright.
to get off on a crazy tangent
So,
about
Let's
administrations
use
and whatnot.
the floating topic that is hanging out down here next, because
Well, hold on. I want to add on to that.
Oh,
If
I'm
Are
sorry.
we done with that? I thought you were going to
no,
add something on that
because
category.
I think big part of, and Austin, back me up here if you remember the final chapter of the book that is left out of the movie,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So in the film, we kind of get that he's stripped away of everything, right? Well, in the movie, he realizes why,
You mean
or in the book,
yeah.
he realizes why he is stripped of these things and repents for it. But he doesn't do that in the fucking movie.
Yeah, they essentially eliminated the final chapter of the book and
Right.
just left him to be
Right.
a psychopath.
Which I guess Kubrick read the original printing of the book in the UK, which does not have the final chapter in it. That's why he made the movie the way he did,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a cop out.
right?
Just read the English version.
Well,
Mark knows the damn thing.
Read the
USA
American.
all day, baby.
Read the
American.
USA. USA.
We won the war
USA.
for a fucking reason. Give us our props.
Yeah, okay.
well, here's what I want to add onto that category.
Yeah.
That is, I think, really interesting because for many decades and centuries, I mean, stories have put this idea out there of free choice versus societal oppression and others making your decisions for you, right? That's the plot of many movies, of many books.
Giver, Brave New World.
Yeah, Equilibrium.
whatever.
I mean, yeah, you can
Yeah.
go on and on and on. And that's a great good versus evil, freedom versus oppression, all these conflicts that are at the core of storytelling and at the core of narrative. It's a very strong, powerful conflict. And what's interesting with this movie is that it takes this conflict, and injects the component into it of the choice that he's being forced to abandon is actually something that people consider horrible. And it comes into play ethically, whereas if what this person is doing is terrible, is it right to force him to stop, or is it right to allow them to choose to continue? And that's like the base argument of all freedom of expression, freedom of speech. You know, if there's a hate crime or a hate post on social media, is it right to allow it to exist because of freedom of speech? Is it right to take it down because of the negativity that it spreads and the wrong message that it sends and things like that? And that's why I think is really interesting about this movie is that, yes, there's the discussion of freedom to choose versus having your choices made for you, but it's almost flipped on its head because Alex is not the good guy, and we are not rooting for him to have his freedoms and to choose to live his life the way he wants to. People naturally would agree that he should be contained in a way, and he needs to stop these behaviors. But in doing so, we remove his founding humanistic right to choose and right to exist as he sees fit. So that's what I think is really interesting in this movie, because you have that discussion, but then you have that component where Alex is actually like a terrible person. So it's like, whose side do you take? Do you guys personally, are you on the side of the government? I mean, do you see Alex as a victim at all in this movie ever because of the way he's forced into this therapy and the way his mind is warped and twisted, even though he's a psychopath? I mean, that I think is a really interesting question. Anyone think that Alex is a victim in this movie at any point?
There's only 2 times that I felt human about him, and I'll use human over victim. One was when he came home, and there was just some other jabroni living in his house.
Yeah.
And the way his parents acted was the way that I've seen parents act about kids that are abusive to their parents in like stories in terms I don't have someone in my life that does that in any way, shape, or form. But the way that you see that is he's very much like, well, why is this happening? And the parents are like, well, he already paid the rent. And then the other kid's like, nah, fuck you. I live here now. So that was 1. 2 was in the hospital bed when the cameras rolled in because it was a publicity stunt. And I think at human nature at our core, yeah, he is a messed up person that rapes and murders. And personally, if he would have died throughout the movie, I would have gave it a standing ovation for whenever it was ending. But I think the closer understanding to him as a human is the fact that the government, no matter what happens to you, no matter if it's good or bad, no matter which way it's twisted, will use you as a publicity stunt for legal means, whether it's side A or side B. It doesn't matter which side of politics is your friend, as you can see by the guy that's saying people wanted to use you for politics. Well, so did that guy, clearly based on the fact that a bunch of photographers came in. So I think those are the only 2 times that I thought he was a human being. Other than that, he was just somebody. Anastasia writes in, why are there so many people on the show? Because it's a fucking movie that needs digested, and none of us had one stomach to do it.
That is
Um,
actually a
um,
great fucking way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah.
there's a ability of this film that makes me like really, I really, like Derek said, like this person's a shitty person and whatever, and you want that person to learn their own ways of society and why they broke it and why it needs to be fixed. But essentially, he has no ability to understand that when he's being forced to almost throw up at every opportunity. I mean, you could go for the fact that there's really not much you can do when that's happening. It's essentially, and it shows at the end where he drives to ultimately try to end his life. Where like, is it really helping you, or is it essentially hurting more than helping? And again, like, there's no, I don't feel bad for the guy in any way, shape, or form, but it's like the need to understand has been taken away with the need to enforce.
That's an interesting topic, or an interesting
Yeah, I like that.
sentiment at least. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't particularly feel for him in any regard. And I mean, I'll talk about part of this more in the next segment, so I won't touch on it that much now. But I mean, personally, I think, it comes down to like a personal view on how you view society and humanity as a whole. But like, personally, I think, they're just, to have a cohesive, functioning society, you need to play by certain rules. And I mean, we have laws for most of these rules, but I think that there are genuinely just some people that don't belong like in a advanced society, and kind of so we were talking about now. I was thinking about like I'm sure a lot of people, especially recently with the whole Jeffrey Epstein shit, like feel a certain way about like pedophiles and pedophilia, where like if this movie was about, or if this was like a true story about like a pedophile, and then he does this therapy, and he's like, I'm cured, like I don't think that makes me, I don't feel any better about him, because his now redemption wasn't self procured.
It wasn't earned.
Yeah.
It was forced on him.
Like, I just think some people are unfit to, belong in like a normal functioning society, and I can't really feel for him because he doesn't actively make a change that makes him a better person.
Sure. There's something to be said for
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. That's a great point.
Roland writes, and Alex is the protagonist of the movie, even when he commits acts of evil. When government steps in and forces him to behave, it's kind of hard not to relate in some way. And I think on a human level, everyone has an extreme fear of incarceration. We start to root for him against our better judgment.
Who's Roland? And
It's
why
my
is he
boy
not on
Adam.
the show?
It's my boy Adam.
Young G.
Adam's got some fucking brains on him.
He has a podcast. I'll
Oh,
plug it real quick.
go for
They
it.
talk about vintage horror films. It's called Driveway Drive-In.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
That-
Driveway.
You definitely
Driving.
sound like you were questioning if you knew the name of it for a
It
second.
was either diners, drive-ins, and dashes. Or
Roland, you're...
something like
Is that Guy?
that. Yeah.
Guy.
He's my guy.
Fieri.
He is my guy.
Mwah.
Nice. But
Okay.
Yeah, great point. Okay, so that's that category. Great topic. What do you guys want to do next? Commercial? Or are we going to roll on?
Let's do... This is the end, and then commercial, and then we'll come back with better and worse.
Great.
Cool.
This is the end. Who's that? Is that yours?
This is me.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, didn't mean to do this whole thing where
Yeah, no, I put it right in the middle, so everyone knows it's yours.
that's my baby.
Mhm.
So ultimately, I was not interested in this movie for most of the movie. And then we get the scene where Alex finds himself at the house where the one rape happened and old boy's in a wheelchair. And I was like, I didn't expect this to happen.
Sure.
So now I'm back in.
Yeah.
And I was back in until the last 5 minutes of the movie, and then I was like, I don't know what happened, because ultimately at that point, and like I said, talking about his redemption isn't brought on by himself, it's brought on by the therapy. But I was like, okay, I'm starting to get it. Like, even if you are this terrible person and you do redeem yourself, the aspect of like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, like, you can never you're never like fully clean. Like there's still things that tie you back to what you did. Even if you're a better person, you've left this life behind, like there are still things that like might not trigger you to do things, but take you back to like humble you of like, you know, don't forget like who you were. And then the minister comes in and he's like, "Oh, we'll get you a job. We'll compensate you for like, you know,
What kind of job?
yeah, we'll compensate you for the job. We'll compensate you for what you think you might have went through, and we'll keep it moving." And they bring in the speakers and all the reporters. And at that point, I was like, "Fuck, I don't think that's what the movie was about." I think that scene is like a greater, and I don't know if it's about, because now like we're so used to like, you know, questioning the media and questioning the government, and maybe in the 70s that was like a
It was
topic.
definitely a big theme in the 70s.
Yeah.
As big as it is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I'm just not familiar with, you know, I wasn't alive in that time period, so I can't relate to exactly what was going on then. And I was like, is this not about like the story of redemption? Is this more like a critique on the media and the government? But like it seems like I don't know. The end just like completely like fucked with me, where I was like, I thought I knew what was going on, and now I don't think I get this movie at all.
Yeah, so the book is about self-choice versus societal norms, right? That is the core concept of the book. And that is why the final chapter becomes so important, is it brings it back to that, right? Whereas where we end in the movie kind of leaves it on this like super downer, you know, melodramatic note, right? So I think this entire conversation is great about, you know, the core concept of the book and roughly the movie. But I love Zach's point, because this is what makes it a shit fucking movie, is that weird little scene that I agree totally takes you away from so the aversion therapy scene. Never mind. I should stop looking at that. I'm fucking talking.
Yep. I'm the producer.
Sorry, bud. Anyway, so but that is where I start to have a problem with this movie, is that kind of a decision, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, so we've set this whole thing up beautifully, and like I think we all kind of got pulled back in at the end. It was like, shit, is he gonna go live with this guy? Is this guy gonna take care of him? The guy,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he led to his wife's murder, his wife's death. Are they now gonna be like together? And you're like, that's so insane. Like maybe people can change, and then it just over to this thing, and that happens so many times in this movie. That's what makes it a shit fucking movie.
Yeah, because what really fucked with me is I was telling my guy that just read the book about, you know, the movie, and he hasn't seen the movie, but he was like, well, now that you watch the movie, the book ends with like him running into one of his old gang buddies
Right.
at a pub,
Right.
and he's like a professional with like a wife and kids, and Alex realizes that like there is a better life,
Right.
and I was like, well, fuck, that would tie together the movie.
Right.
Like that completes a story, where I
Mhm.
don't think this ending completes the story. But it's
Either
not like
way.
a cliffhanger.
No, does anybody like the ending where the aversion therapy does not take, and he's like, actually, I'm still crazy?
does
Does
it-
nobody like Austin? You gotta love that.
Well, does it not
I
take
liked it.
because he says he has the
I
dreams
liked
that
it.
the doctors are like fucking with his brain.
I
And
think it
understood
wears
that
off, like, because it obviously takes for a while. There,
Doctors
he's
are messing with
sick
my
and he's-
joggle.
He's trying to jump out the window,
yeah.
but then at the end, when he has that, he's in front of all the cameras, and then he has that like flash dream sequence to like him having sex with a girl in front of everybody, and they're all cheering him on. Like that's saying it actually didn't take, even though everyone thinks that it took.
Yeah,
It
just
really,
limited
it
his
didn't.
options. Yeah.
Well, I took
Essentially
it
pulling
as
the wool over like other people's eyes as
Yeah.
to what you are. Now you're essentially a wolf in sheep's clothing, going among the sheep, ready to prepare anything that you might have for the world. Like
because I
Yeah.
took it as like the doctors were like in his brain, like they were actually in his brain, like undoing what the aversion therapy did, because they knew that they had fucked up. And because she was like, oh yeah, a lot of people with this injury have that same dream, and I was like, so I just thought that was like them alluding
Huh.
to that, like
That's
yeah,
interesting.
a lot of people have this dream because like the doctors are actually in there like fucking with your head.
I'll hand up. I didn't understand
But
the ending.
that's how I took that. I took that as
So you took the ending as an actual like dream sequence, where it's like he's just.
That was his
It's not
like
real.
that was his heaven to me. The character had died and
Uh-huh.
gone to heaven where he's just having sex with a chick and everyone's watching. That was how I took it. I was like, all right, this looks like heaven. Alex in his core is dead in the sense that he can't do these crazy things anymore, but he's still the crazy psychopath. Like he physically cannot do the thing, but in his head he's still doing those things. So the character was dead and that was his heaven, and he just lives there perpetually reliving that scene, and everything else is just him on autopilot. Was how I saw it, and honestly, I might be the only person that's ever thought of that, and it was just sitting there, and I was like, this sounds right.
I buy that. I buy every single ending that has been pitched, which is obviously the sign of a good Kubrick movie. But
Yeah. Well, Austin, this is your area of expertise. What's the ending? Tell us, bud.
I don't know, man. For this, like, I knew that the therapy had run its course when they were giving him the pictures at the end, and
Yeah.
he was giving his responses. Now, normally when you would do that, like in his case scenario after therapy, you would get sick even just thinking about it. But he was able to spew off, that he would like throw eggs or like crack someone in the head or whatever. And right there, I knew that shit, like he is back to the way that he was supposed to.
Yeah.
And you kind of get maybe a glimpsing turn of it when the symphony starts playing at the end when he freezes up. But I think that's just his body like going back and forth like from so much shit, finally just realizing, and his brain just being like, yep, I'm cured.
Yeah.
This is how it is now. That's my take on it. Like I could get Derek's point where like, you could argue that all the camera and the media and the symphony and everything just killed him right there because he does freeze up, and then that is his heaven, like thinking about it. I could get that point. But for me personally, I believe that he finally does cure himself when he tries to end his own life. It's just that he ends up broken in the process of it. Not completely fixed, just a little broken.
I will say too, there were multiple times after the treatment, when he ran into his two buddies that became cops. There were multiple times where I said that treatment's not over. Like he's hallucinating, or they paid his buddies to come beat the shit out. There were multiple times that I thought, this is still, the treatment is still going. He's locked. Like this is not the real world that he's in. This is a situation they created to make him be like. I was like, the end of the movie is gonna be them saying, "And your treatment is over." I think that would have been a better fucking ending.
I don't hate that, and I'm only going to say this because we had talked about on the way here about when he goes back to the house. I thought that Julian dude was going to rape him. I thought the big dude was going to rape him.
yeah.
But talking about what he's saying is, given what he was responsible for to the guy in the wheelchair, and what he had done, when he goes back to the house, they don't. I mean, that Julian dude was fucking huge. They don't beat him up. They don't rape him. They don't do anything with sex or violence. The only thing they torture him with is with the Ninth Symphony,
right.
which he has this aversion to rape and violence now, to the point where maybe he can't process it, but he can still process the music because it wasn't something that he was being treated for. It was just an unintended consequence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll dive into the music in a later
You
discussion.
might be on some shit, bro.
I'm
You
a-
might be on some next level
Well,
shit.
that is
I'm a
definitely
fucking
something.
genius, brother.
Literally, I watched this entire like half-hour mini documentary about Kubrick, and like at the end of it, they were talking about, but maybe it was all a dream, just like every single one of his movies, and
Yup.
that you can look at literally every one of his movies through that lens, and it makes everything like click.
Agreed.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I like the ending as is. I like that
Okay.
he did not
Yeah.
get cured. I think that's a much tamer, non-Kubrickian ending that doesn't fit with this movie at all. It'd be like at the end of Saw if the guy was just like, "Oh yeah, now I can walk out of this room." It just doesn't. It would ruin the movie. It's
Yeah.
better because of the way it ends.
Wait, couldn't he just get out of the room that was the end of Saw?
No, he got stuck in the room.
I thought
The very first Saw.
All right. While they
I
debate about that, we're
yeah.
going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Let's dive right into sports, as I have strong opinions on that. Which college team could beat a professional team in the same sport right now?
Okay.
There is not a single answer that is better than the LSU Tigers defeating the Cincinnati Bengals.
Even if I know the pitch that's coming, every other part of me is still normal.
That's why it's frustrating for me, Greg.
It's like okay, if I know what something is coming, I know ahead of time. I still have to be able to do the action to get the result that I need.
Okay, so they won 3 games in 10 years with 3 rebuilds.
I don't lose at arguments. All right.
Especially about fast food. So yeah.
You will never walk alone. Guess what? Now you will. Coronavirus.
I barely touch my girlfriend's cat. The most I'd be willing to do is like just kind of put my finger on its forehead and just like.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with us is Alex Kazor from Steelers Depot.
We are live with Ryan Smith, professional cornhole player in the ACL. Ryan,
what all franchises were you able to work with in the NHL?
With Phoenix, Carolina, and Detroit.
No.
So here is Moorhead's ranking. Moorhead is my cousin. He is the rank king.
Higher
Top 10 extra Power Rangers.
Oh.
Okay.
This is the top 10 emo songs of the 2000s.
There's only one correct answer for number 1. Why is F is for Family better than Futurama when Futurama is like Star Wars for potheads? Like
I know. Well, I think
We have one or two that are mad in the chat.
You're welcome for that.
Okay, we're gonna get banned.
Are you a sports fan? Do you love football? Like, do you eat, sleep, and breathe football? But when it comes to fantasy, you just never seem to get it right? Well, have no fear, my friend. Thoughts from the Bench is here to take you from Sunday scaries to Sunday success. So sit right there and enjoy a beer and get ready to change your fantasy life with Boondock Bangarang.
We're calling it the Idiot Hour. Hey, Denny Hamlin, new NASCAR fan here.
You really gotta you gotta blow. He wears the skull of his dead mother. And then when he finally copes with the death of his mother,
He becomes his
he
mother.
becomes Marowak.
Correction. Ovi is the greatest offensive talent we've ever seen.
I am E.
You dumbass. We are back.
All right, welcome back. We're gonna do a segment that we premiered last week.
I
had
like
a lot
that.
of fun with.
Yeah.
Called Better Than, Worse Than. So we put together a small list of movies, like 8 or 9 of them, that are in the vein of Clockwork Orange. Not necessarily Kubrick, just similar movies. And we're gonna go around and say which is better of the two.
Sure.
So who put the order? Josh, Derek, who has the order? What are we doing?
I can read them out if you need me to.
Yeah, let's just pull one up.
Shaboom!
American Psycho, Christian Bale's coming out party at the tender age of 27. Has everyone seen this movie?
Oh man, that means I have
Patrick
no
Bateman.
fucking hope of being an actor. I just turned 28.
Hey, you know what? Hey, Samuel L. was like 45, man. You're
Well,
good.
and how old was Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah, he was in his 50s.
You know what my
Christoph
favorite thing
Waltz.
to do is Google actors' current ages
Yeah.
and tell myself I still have time. Like,
Plenty
oh,
of
Childish
time.
Gambino's 34. I have so much time.
So much time. except
Little
for
did I know
accomplish.
he was literally writing
all
on
of that.
SNL when he was 21.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. So go ahead.
All right, American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, insane performance. It's about a psychotic murderer of sorts. It's not dystopian. It's set in present day, but it's just very psychologically interesting movie. It's got some dark humor to it. What do you guys think? Which is better than is A Clockwork Orange better than or worse than American Psycho?
Worse than.
Which one?
He said, "Is A Clockwork Orange better than or worse than American Psycho?"
I'm sorry.
You're good. Worse
Worse
than.
than? Okay.
American
Worse than,
Psycho
okay.
is a better movie.
Okay.
I'm gonna agree. I think I enjoy American Psycho more. I don't know, like on a technical level, that I would say it's better from a filmmaking aspect, but I like this movie. There are some really cool, interesting things happening. I think it's a better written movie. The dialogue is great. Characters are a little better. Yeah, I like American Psycho more.
Agreed. I think it's more entertaining, although I don't think maybe Clockwork Orange was intended to be entertaining. But I mean, in regard to watching movies. That's
Mhm.
kind of one of the things you look for is to be entertained. So
Austin?
So I'm gonna say that American Psycho is better. I projectively associate monologuing in these types of things. I loved the monologuing that went on in the head of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. It almost rivals
Very
the
similar to
Dexter
this.
Morgan and Dexter.
Mm.
When the thoughts of the inner thoughts of this for Alex for A Clockwork Orange were like almost play on silly words that I was like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense with tollywogs and
Tollywog your gibbles, brother.
well, jibby jibby.
Milk.
But I really did appreciate the monologuing done in American Psycho, and that's why I'm going to go with it.
Nice.
I've not seen it.
Okay. Put
You
it
can
on the
still
list.
vote. I have set a very dangerous precedent that I will still vote on movies that I have not seen.
Wow.
Like
Based on the poster.
Oh, poster? Clockwork Orange is a much better poster than this.
Yeah.
Well, that's stupid. This one has Christian Bale on it.
All right, what do we got next?
Next, we got Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver. Okay, another mentally unstable protagonist. A lot of similar
This
themes
has
that
a
are
better
explored.
poster.
You talking to me?
This is a better
you?
poster.
I think Taxi Driver is
me?
actually a really great comparison,
You?
given the
Talking to me?
director comparison
Yep.
between Kubrick and Scorsese, and the accomplishments on the technical side, and some of the way that the movies were made, but also the things that they explored. So I think this is a great comparison.
Yeah.
I don't. What do you guys think? Who has an idea? I don't know. It's tough.
My Scorsese brother.
I honestly don't love Taxi Driver,
Yes.
but I still think it's a better movie than Clockwork
Hypocrisy.
Orange.
We're just going to push all Scorsese movies into the middle and say they're better than all Kubrick movies.
Goddamn
That's
right. Oh,
that's
oh.
a big statement. That's a very big. That's a bold statement.
That
That's
was
a
fun.
big one.
I
I'll
enjoyed
fucking
that.
ride with it. Whatever.
Yeah, fuck fuck that.
I'm gonna base it off.
We have like 30 movies. Fuck you.
Okay. You guys like The Room too, huh? I am going to base it off the fact that I've never seen Taxi Driver, and this is how I
Yes.
introduced
Let's
this.
go.
Josh. Yeah, let's do
Let's
this.
go.
So, two of the most iconic scenes that I would have been able to name from these movies are "I'm singing in the rain." I knew that scene, and I know that "You Talking to Me" and "You Talking to Me" is way fucking better than that Gene Kelly remake. So
Let's go.
Taxi Driver
Talking to
wins.
me?
Austin.
Man, I love both of these films. I'm gonna give Taxi Driver a little bit more of an edge,
Gasp.
just on the precedent of it.
Gotcha. These are pretty even for me. Like
Yeah.
I watched Taxi Driver. I didn't love it as much. I don't know if the anticipation had just been built up so much. It was okay. I don't remember a ton about it. I mean, same I think is going to be with A Clockwork Orange. It's definitely not towards the top of these directors' filmography for me.
Yeah. I wouldn't put this as a top 10 Scorsese film.
No, I'd
Yeah.
say these are about even in my book.
Right? Yeah.
So
This is
I
the
mean,
Toy
I-
Story 3 of Scorsese
Definitely not
films.
top
yeah.
5.
I would put it above The Departed, but I fucking hate The Departed.
Right,
so.
I know you fucking departed.
what does Roland say?
Yeah, what
Similar-
did Roland
I
say?
can't read from this angle.
Roland's had similar movies with protagonists that are tough to root for, anti-heroes and their purest. I like to think that Roland has a Western voice now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Similar movies with protagonists that are tough to root for, anti-heroes in their purest form. I'd go Taxi Driver. Travis is easier to like.
There we go.
I agree because I think Travis is beaten down and a product of society.
Is that Travis
where-
Barker?
Versus
Pretty
the
much,
flip.
yeah.
Yeah.
Famous Stars and Straps.
Thanks,
But
Austin. Love you,
I
Austin.
think that Alex is just a fuck that happens to live in our
Terrible person.
society.
Nice.
Yeah, if Alex ran into, wow, the fucking just boom.
Travis.
Right. What? Travis. Yeah, if Alex ran into Travis in real life, Travis would kick the fuck
Wait, that's
out
the
of
actual
Alex.
dude in Taxi. Travis Barker is not who that is, correct? Because
That's-
Austin.
that's
Jesus
Robert
Christ.
De Niro.
Okay,
Yeah.
Austin's messing with me now. Because I said Travis Barker, and he said yeah, and then he said Travis, and I
Yeah,
thought I heard
I
something
don't think
Barker.
Travis Barker.
I
was
can't
born
believe
yet.
we just had to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right, next movie.
Yep. Pencilhead, Eraserhead.
Eraserhead.
It's-
I'm too scared to watch this movie.
We did watch this
What
movie.
is it?
It's David Lynch. I mean, it's his most famous movie, and David Lynch is a very surrealist filmmaker who did Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive, which is, I think, the only one of his movies I've seen. But you take this one.
That
Okay.
hair is
Has anyone else seen Eraserhead?
I know Austin has seen Eraserhead.
It's the
Yeah,
one where he
it's
rides
been a
the bong,
long
right?
time since I've
No,
watched this
I haven't
film,
seen
but
it.
yes, I've seen it.
I've never
Okay.
seen Eraserhead.
So Eraserhead is like, to sum it up in a scene, there is a 5-minute, and it is 5-minute runtime of him seeing a dead cat next to a fence, and when he opens the fence gate, it moves the dead cat. And we watch him do this for 5 minutes. Him fuck with the gate, and the dead cat moves.
Is his short from 2018, Anthead, a sequel?
Could be.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, this movie sounds like a freak show.
Yeah, Eraserhead is a
Okay.
worse movie, but David Lynch is weird. Kubrick is mainstream weird. That's the separation I'm putting on this. So, yeah.
I'd say that's a fair summation.
I'd rather watch Clockwork Orange. I'd rather watch neither of them if given my choice. But
Right.
if society makes me watch one, I'm going to watch Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, agreed.
Orange.
Okay. Well, no one's seen it then. So,
I have seen it.
well, Austin has, but it's been a while.
Looks like Frankenstein.
So you going with this
I would
one?
say-
Hell no.
Yeah,
Oh.
I would say if I had to pick to choose one, I'd pick Clockwork Orange over this
Agreed.
one.
Do you know whose favorite movie this was in high school?
Yeah, Neville.
That's
David
right.
Neville.
Kyle Neville.
Kyle Neville. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Next.
Roland says Google search for Eraserhead Baby and say goodbye for sleep for a month. I am good. Apocalypse Now.
Let's go.
Apocalypse Now.
Dr. Bacher.
Another, from the same class, Coppola and Kubrick, kind
Yep.
of around the same time. Kubrick was a little bit before, but for the most part, pretty similar. I think Apocalypse Now, even though it's a similar one where I don't know how many times I'd want to actually rewatch it after I saw it the first time, but just I appreciate it a lot more. I'll say that.
Have you seen Apocalypse Now?
I haven't.
Okay. Austin?
You know what? I want to say that I did, but for
You
the length of it, I
That's
think I'm
all right.
going to say that I haven't seen this one. I'm trying to look up the plot for it right now, actually.
Big war. Marlon Brando is living amongst a tribe. Martin Sheen is trying to find him.
I just like to say that Josh did not ask me if I saw this movie.
I'm so sorry. Did you see this movie?
Fuck no. It was like Nosferatu.
Yeah. It is iconic.
Kind of.
It's a classic
Okay,
one.
so I would say, stick with me on this. Apocalypse Now is more confusing than A Clockwork Orange.
I don't know.
The plot is harder to hold on to through Apocalypse Now than A Clockwork Orange.
I don't think that's very. No, it's not
No?
confusing. He's just going upriver to find the crazy colonel.
I know, but like bizarre shit and the flashbacks and like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dreams and like I'm constantly in Apocalypse Now, like holding onto my chair, like I'm not sure where we're going with this. And then like Clockwork Orange, I was like, okay, I kind of get where this is going.
Okay.
So I would say
Interesting take.
Apocalypse Now is the better movie, but Clockwork Orange somehow is more straightforward than Apocalypse Now.
All right, nice way to describe it.
Roland, Apocalypse Now.
Tedious to
Tedious.
get through. More like Ambien now.
Wow.
Ouch.
Wow. We gotta have your buddy on the show. He's got
Can I
this.
throw out my fun fact?
Yeah.
Marlon
throw it.
Brando used to hook up with Richard Pryor. So I like this movie more because that's fucking wild.
Jungle Fever. I love it.
Wow. I don't think we could say that. Next movie.
Next movie.
Next movie, quickly.
Joker. All right, for some of our more recent audiences
Yes.
who don't know what the hell we're talking about, most people I think have seen this movie, which made $1 billion
I have
last
not
year.
seen this movie.
Get out.
I know.
Ugh. No, I'm kidding.
I've seen Apocalypse Now, but I've not seen Joker. I've
Roland
seen
says I was
Eraserhead.
wondering when Joker was going to get brought up.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, though,
Right
that
now,
it's hard to
Roland.
watch this movie after Heath Ledger's Joker
Right.
because it's like, what's the point? But what do you guys think? Which is better, Joker or Clockwork Orange?
I know you've seen this one, Derek.
No, I
No?
haven't. I'm actually boycotting this movie.
Nice.
I
Good.
believe that the Joker is better not knowing an origin story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We just high-fived.
I just haven't. If it's on HBO, I'll probably watch it tonight, and I'm super excited to watch
Well,
it. But boycotting is
I-
the easiest way for me to say that I
I
haven't
like
seen
that. Austin?
So I would say that Joker is better. Not just, I mean, you're going into that movie alone, like kind of being like, okay, like they're giving him a backstory and everything, but you just realize that they're just using Joker, the name Joker, as a front for a man with a serious mental like issue, and just going through his world and realizing how he's treated and everything that goes about it makes me feel for the character so much. And a lot of Batman fans and a lot of, like Derek said, like they really like Joker, the character Joker is best when there's no origin. It's all mystery behind it. And that's kind of where like it gets lost in the mix, but they're just using the name Joker as a front to push the issue of mental illness for this movie. And based around that, that movie was great. Taking that out of the equation and just realizing that it's just a man that's just fucked up, and you have to realize through his shoes what he goes through. Beats I like A Clockwork Orange, but the Joker beats it 9 times out of I'll go 9.9 times out of 10 even.
Zach?
Yeah, because I think I could be wrong here, but I'm under the impression that within Batman and the Batman universe that there's different like stories, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
there's
not
different-
all.
Yeah, there's a million Batman.
Yeah.
Is,
So
yeah.
this Joker is not necessarily the precursor to like the Heath Ledger Joker.
Heath Leather.
I'd wear some Heath leather.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Ledgerhead. Yeah.
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 So this is just like a different character almost.
Well,
you know?
I mean, it's the green hair, it's the clown smile face. Is this DC canon, Austin? And I'm sorry to derail the show a little bit, but I believe it's DC
You're good.
canon.
No, as of late, no. I mean, they're using like Gotham City and everything, and Arkham Asylum
Yeah.
before it was like the actual asylum. But I think they're just going with a basic, like, you know how when a teacher gives you like an outline and says, go for what you can do with it now? This is exactly what happened with this. Like, they used the outline of Gotham City, they used that DC outline, but then they went in their own specific direction. And from what I've heard, they're trying to bring Joaquin Phoenix on for at least 2 more Joker films.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'll do that or not, but...
And Roland says, really like the movie. Really hard to suspend my disbelief enough to believe that Joaquin's Joker ever becomes a criminal mastermind powerful enough to go against Batman.
Yeah, and that because like the heists and shit, like just the opening scene from The Dark Knight, like this man is not capable of pulling this off. This man is more just fucking unhinged, incapable of performing complex tasks.
Well, okay, so now that we're talking about the Joker, Justin, and the actual like legitimized understanding of how it is through cinema, is this considered like a good take on the Joker? Like, do you know what I'm asking? Like, is this a legitimate, understood, appreciated piece of cinema around the Joker, or is it just a really freaking good movie with the guidelines that Austin was talking about?
Well, from the DC standpoint, I think a lot of the fans were satisfied with it, even though it was an original take on the character.
Yeah.
Because obviously it was a critical and commercial mega success. You know, $1 billion Oscar-nominated movie. A lot of people saw it, and a lot of people liked it.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't officially, it's not a DC version. Like, it's not part of that lore. So, yeah, I mean, they took an original, like you said, outline, and kind of Todd Phillips made it his own, and people really responded to it. So.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a great character study, fantastic character study. I mean, as far as it exists in Batman world, whatever. But like as a mental illness piece, it's very interesting. I'd watch this again before I'd watch Clockwork Orange again.
Sweet.
I'd rather watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest than
Well,
the Joker.
Speaking of One Flew Over the
Also on
Cuckoo
Netflix.
Nest, our next movie is Natural Born Killers.
What?
Just
How
another.
Where did that segue go?
Switcheroo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who has seen this movie?
I have not seen this movie.
I have once.
I love Woody Harrelson.
Oz?
Yeah, I've seen it once.
Okay. Deke?
Hell no.
No. Okay. You start thinking about the poster.
I'm staring at Woody Harrelson.
All right. Okay.
Not Bruce Willis is what I'm going to call him.
These 2 movies are so close, just set in separate times.
Yeah.
Where literally it's like instead of one person, there's 2 people, they're lovers, and they're from Florida. Like that's pretty much the difference.
Nice.
Yeah.
Could be a documentary.
It really could. I think I rather watch Natural Born Killers in the sense of that fucking cast. That cast speaks to me a lot deeper than the gentleman who played Alex and the rest of that cast. So like star power alone, I want to watch Natural Born Killers.
Okay.
It's a better movie.
I saw Juliette Lewis perform at Riot Fest, and it was fucking sick.
I bet she's awesome.
Yeah.
Austin?
That's all I got.
I'm gonna go with watching A Clockwork Orange over this. I know that's a hot take, but
no, I don't think so.
For me, just the ideology of a weird society in the future and what complexes that is more interesting to me than your average. Like, I don't want to call it average. That's pretty shitty to say, but the plot of like with Natural Born Killers. Like,
Sure.
I kind of would rather prefer yell A Clockwork Orange over that to see where that would lie in rather than not.
I buy that.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
Next, we got American History X.
American History X. Not definitely hard subject matter, different for sure than A Clockwork Orange. And what's interesting is that a lot of people think that Edward Norton, you look at him and he's like scary and violent, but he's actually in the movie, when you watch it, he's reformed. Like he is trying to keep his little brother away from this. But all the promotional materials show you this image and you're like, man, he's a badass. Who's he going to be like, curb stomping motherfuckers and stuff like that. But American History X, I would watch over Clockwork Orange for sure again.
Yeah, same.
Likewise.
Yeah, I think this is the sequel to Fight Club when he gets out of Fight Club.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, finds himself in some trouble.
Absolutely
So,
correct.
I'm going to go with Fight Club 2, American History X.
Austin.
He talked about it and then became a reformed Nazi.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go with American History X over A Clockwork Orange.
Nice. Yeah,
Cool.
very good one.
All right, next.
All right, next. Mad Max, the original Mad Max, the Road Warrior.
You don't
Mel
understand
Gibson
how much I
himself.
wanted to put Fury Road in here.
I was curious which one it would be. Yeah, I was really curious. I don't know how similar those two movies really are.
Dystopian future.
Dystopian future, but I mean, yeah, like Mad Max is not a protagonist we really dive into. It's a very action-driven movie, and the vehicle sequences are insane, especially given the budget and the time period. I'd watch Mad Max over and over before I'd watch Clockwork Orange.
They are similar in the sense of that, though, that they're both low-budget films.
I don't think Clockwork Orange is that low budget. It's like
2
$15
million.
2 million?
2 million.
No way.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Because he had just done A Space Odyssey, and he had to prove to studios that he did not need the 12 million that he used on Space Odyssey, or 21 million or whatever it was.
Definitely should have had a couple more million.
It says the budget is 15 million on IndieWire.
Really?
Yeah.
That's not what I saw
Whoa.
today in one of the little doc things I watched.
Josh just scraped 13 million from the bank.
I really did. I really did.
I know I'm going to go with Mad Max because I have a new pickup line, which is the maximum force of the future. And
Is
I
that
just
you
stare
sliding
at
into
the-
DMs?
It's just what I'm going to tell women from now on.
Wow.
Splendid Daddy.
Okay. Interesting.
That's the greatest thing I've ever put on Instagram ever. A splendid daddy is a sugar daddy that doesn't have the financial means to be a sugar daddy.
You're a splendid daddy.
Yeah, it's basically like a sugar daddy's intern. Like you're getting there.
All right.
I can't offer you money, but I have the maximum force of the future.
That's all they really want.
You are fighting back your own laugh so hard
Yeah.
right now. It's pretty funny
Yeah.
to watch you do.
Oh God, he's gone full aversion therapy. I would pick Mad Max. I mean, I like it. I think it's a more enjoyable movie, but also like, I get that Clockwork Orange is supposed to be this dystopian future, but like, there's still a government and shit. Like, it doesn't seem dystopian in any other regard that they have like the worst law enforcement ever. I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't include V for Vendetta in this list.
That would have been a good one.
Real quick, hot take. V for Vendetta, better or worse than Clockwork Orange? Anybody?
I take V for Vendetta.
Yeah, Vendetta.
Yeah.
Austin, Mad Max, and V for Vendetta.
Yeah, both over Clockwork Orange in this sense.
Nice.
There you go. All right, and then the final one.
Well, not in alphabetical order, Austin.
Which I think I put this in there. This is Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Ooh.
And I feel like this is the closest subject matter wise between the two movies, right? Where we're talking about reform of somebody's personal choice versus, it's the Catholic Church in The Wall versus society in A Clockwork Orange. Personally, I rather watch The Wall, but I'm a giant Pink Floyd guy, so that's going to happen every time. But I do think that also just the bizarre nature of both of them, right? They both have these really elaborate sex scenes. They both have these really bizarre, overtones and like characterizations of things,
Okay.
So, has anyone seen The Wall?
Yeah, I have.
Zach?
I haven't.
No.
No, I'm more of a Wonderwall.
I love you.
Different kind of wall.
Oh, yeah.
Austin, what do you think?
Kind of fits the poster though.
Man, this is because I watched this probably. I think my roommate introduced this to me because he was a huge Pink Floyd fan, and we watched it, I think, our freshman year in college. And I was like, whoa, like, what's going on? All this, I feel like this is maddening. All of it proved to me how, with this and A Clockwork Orange, how a psychosis can initially reform, break, a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So I'll say, actually, that they're about even.
Gasp.
Okay.
Okay. I don't hate that take. I think that he's probably pretty spot on. And Derek Googled, is Pink Floyd for douchebags?
The answer was yes.
Austin was talking. And apparently...
That's just great.
Just another reason
Well,
I'm
it was your
douchebag.
roommate's a douche, not you, Austin.
Next topic.
I like Pink Floyd, though.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. You're a douche. Let's go along, ladies and gentlemen. Our next topic for this evening is sound design.
Austin, why don't, since we just talked about a sound movie, man, we set that transition up and didn't even mean to.
Perfect.
Why don't you talk
That's
about...
a discredit to your producer. I meant to do that.
Why don't you talk about Beethoven?
So a lot of times when we talk about like sociopaths and psychopaths and everything, they tend to view more towards the classical side of things with Mozart and Beethoven. You know,
American
how
Psycho.
that's just exactly like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, how that proves to be a visual driving point in this. When he is going through the therapy, you see that unbeknownst to him, Beethoven's Ninth Sympathy is put into, I believe it was the German concentration camp.
Yep.
If I remember correctly. And now we see that a classical music turn, which all the time more essentially drives psychopaths, is now stripped away from him, and now proven to be the knife's sword, or the sword of, you know, of the handler going into the heart for his character, because now you don't have that classical drive anymore. Now you just have a man that's essentially broken. You don't have his violent tendencies, you don't have his sexual desires, and he doesn't have his taste in music. I mean, I think that would pretty much break anybody at this point. Again, not wishing any like bad or good harm on anybody, but for the classical music standpoint, it is beaten down into the serial killer memento for how long, is that those individuals love classical music, and it is shown through this movie.
Okay. Does anybody have a comment about that? Or Beethoven?
I will say that throughout the construct of my life, Austin is the person's opinion that I would suggest is the most accurate on this topic. So, good job, Austin.
Okay. So, I want to talk about sound design. The year is 1929, and they invent this thing called a boom mic. It's very useful. You can hold it far away from people and accurately pick up their voice. So instead of sounding like this, you sound like this, even though you're on the other side of the room. Where the fuck was the goddamn boom mic in this fucking...
There it is.
Ask and you shall receive.
That one's probably going to be in the frame. I don't think we're going to be able to keep that.
I thought it was clear. Do you want to do it again? We can shoot it again if you want.
Yeah, definitely in frame a little bit.
You good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, go ahead, Josh.
So...
And scene.
What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, boom mics.
Thinking about the mountains and the private lake.
Yeah.
I have a question, Justin. Can you go more in depth on the actual understanding of the devices? I don't know the names. One is called a womb mic or something. I don't know. I heard it somewhere that didn't come out of this show. Can you go through the technical understanding of how sound design has evolved through the years? Because I think someone was going to do that, but they broke character like a traditional little jagamuffin.
Is that me or is that you?
I don't care. I don't care.
No, I am actually interested from the professional side of things, how the sound design works in that essence. Because we obviously have a board here, and we mess around with our mics. I muted you. We mess around with our certain stuff, but when it comes to the boom mic, actually, you know, Josh, and please continue talking on the topic, but how has that changed the actual understanding of the way movies are made?
I mean, so the thing that bothers me is the bad sound design in this movie. That's what I'm trying to get at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So characters are constantly yelling for seemingly no fucking reason, right? You can't always get a really crisp sound from them. They're not using ADR. They're just using whatever fucking sound they captured live on set that day, right? And clearly not miking it for us to be able to hear it cleanly. That had to have been a choice. We know Kubrick is such a control freak, right? And he had just done a Space Odyssey, which has some of the greatest sound design in film fucking history.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the sound design so fucking bad in this movie?
Anybody else have problems with the sound? Did you guys notice any moments where you didn't care for it at all, like you couldn't hear what was going on?
Mine was more
or?
the language they used.
Okay.
I didn't really understand a lot of the terms because they were making it up, it felt like. So
It's a Russian and Cockney slang mix is what it is.
Which is
but
a much different Cockney than in Green Street Hooligans, which is the only realm of Cockney that I understand. So I will say, though, maybe to the point that I brought up earlier about being made to feel a certain way, maybe they wanted the sound to be awkward. I don't know. Like, this movie kind of threw me for a loop in every realm. So I believe that everything was justified. So I would assume that there's a reason that the sound was the way it was, and it was to make you notice it. I don't know.
Sure.
I think a lot of the approach to this movie was a very naturalistic approach.
Yeah.
A lot of the lighting was natural lighting. A lot of the sound, I think, was natural sound in the same sense that Kubrick likely wanted to keep it very free of all those technical distractions and let the characters unfold as they would. So that would be my guess as to why that would be that way. But I didn't personally really notice any moments where I was like distracted by the audio. So I don't know if Zach or Austin, you guys were, but for me, I didn't really have too much of an issue with it.
So I'll say this, and then Zach can say his thing. There are times in this movie that the sound essentially was put in a place that almost made like your ears ring. Maybe I just watched it loud, but there are times in this where like your heart kind of skips a beat a little bit with how the sound is playing.
Yeah.
Take for example when he comes back to the house and is taking a bath, and the guy in the wheelchair realizes that it's him and Singing in the Rain, and he essentially goes through almost like a stroke trance, and the sound just blares over all of that. And maybe it's meant to be more of an uncomfortable feeling, like anything that's uncomfortable or going along, the sound kind of jumps a spike to kind of make you feel like, oh, okay, this is a little tense, it's getting a little loud, like this is, maybe that adds to the uncomfortable feeling of the whole production of it.
Well, I want to say one thing before Zach, you go. I want to make a note of that. That's interesting you say that because I think everyone here has seen The Shining, and well, except for Josh, and it still pains me to my core.
What?
Seriously, I have it on DVD, Josh.
That's the movie everyone has seen. And wow.
But the thing with The Shining that I love is that he does what Kubrick does to add to that feeling of discomfort. One of the technical things he does with the sound, right? So when the child Danny Torrance is riding his three-wheeler around the Overlook Hotel, he'll go from wooden floors onto carpeting. So it's like the sound of being on. But Kubrick alters the timing so that it's slightly off.
Right.
So it's like jarring, like he goes onto the carpet, but then it's like a delayed sound effect. And then he goes onto the hardwood, and it's like a delayed. So it's like it's just weirdly awkward, and it adds to the
signature
ambiance.
from him. He does in Full Metal Jacket when 8-Ball gets shot at the end. He's dying, and the dying sound is happening in real time as he's slow motion dying.
Mm.
I mean, this is a staple for him. And so for the sound for it to stand out and me go, that's not great. To me, that's like I can't justify that being a choice. I really fucking can't, because there's whole scenes that are bad. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it.
Which scene particular was bad?
Okay, so
and Zach, we do owe Zach a comment.
I have nothing profound to say.
Okay.
That was profound.
Wow. Scenes that were bad. The first time we see the truant officer, we can't hear the truant officer. He's very right. You can't really make out what he's saying. In the reporting scene, okay, Alex is yelling and everybody else is talking normal. And it's like he's in the distance and they're closer to the mic. Like that's literally how my brain interpreted it.
Yeah.
Because the camera is from behind them, right? So in theory, if let's say they were using an onboard mic for God knows what fucking reason, the characters would indeed be closer and more likely to pick up more of the waveform than Alex, who's screaming from the line. Those things people are trying to play into the performance, and like he's like, oh, I have to be military now, I'm going to turn it up to 11. It's bad sound design. It's bad capturing on scene. And the thing that even more boggles my mind is that Kubrick is famous for making people do shit again. He made them do that goddamn axe scene in The Shining so many times they went through 60 fucking doors.
Yep.
Okay?
So 60 times?
No more. Jack Nicholson couldn't get through the door sometimes. The door was too thick.
What an idiot.
Yeah. So those kinds of things, like, I don't understand how bad the sound design is. And I know Austin's trying to accredit to making me feel uncomfortable, but just like the end scene, it didn't make me feel uncomfortable. It didn't make me think about something. It just took me out of the fucking movie. And that happened so many times in this movie with dumb little things that if they were cleaned up, I think this is a better movie.
So you want the movie to conform to society.
That's
Interesting.
fucking right. I do.
Interesting.
Like when you have the fucking paint check.
Is that a good transition before he breaks everything to the next topic? That is.
I don't have anything to add to sound. Anyone else? Zach, Austin, anyone? We good?
I said mine.
I can't remember whose topic this was, but if it was Josh's, it's kind of an interesting transition.
Yeah, I think it was Josh's. Yeah.
Sweet. So,
moving from the sound, we're going into
revolutionary techniques.
Which it seems interesting. And before you dive into why you chose the topic, that we just talked about the techniques of his sound that you hated
in this movie.
Which is just fair, but the revolutionary techniques is something we're talking about for Clockwork Orange, which you hated his technique of sound. So
yes, some techniques I loved.
Oh,
hit us.
Okay,
what you got?
So in a Space Odyssey, he obviously does some just incredible imagery in it, all through it, right? This movie, we kind of see him play with it in a his new camera techniques that he kind of invented in his Space Odyssey. He's now playing with in what I would consider normal surroundings, right? So in a Space Odyssey, as they're doing like the running shot as he's running around the orb, okay, and they're doing this great tracking shot. It's in space, so you can do whatever it is you need to do to kind of like make that happen. In this, everything is, oh, I know what a room looks like. I know what a house looks like. I know what a walkway looks like, this kind of stuff, right? So he's now experimenting with it in normal spaces. And some of the things he does in this movie that I love this movie for, okay, this is a great, right? We talk about Kubrick loves to put everybody in the middle of his shots, okay? All of his shots are framed dead center, okay? So you see, even though they're moving, they really don't change in the frame, right? And it's not until the chaos happens that we cut. This is all Kubrick, right? So we have a moving camera. We have people walking in and out of the shot but not changing, or walking or movement without changing the frame. And then we also have slow motion involved. We have symmetry. I mean, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is Kubrick to a T. And it's something that I did not realize. You know, I didn't get it from Kubrick, but this is stuff that I see in my own filmmaking and my own photography where I'm like, I love putting things in the center because they are uncomfortable. I love perfect symmetry because it's like, what am I looking at here? Is that actually real? Because think about the number of times you actually look at something dead on, right? You don't normally in life. So I love those little touches through this. Some other amazing things he invented, the Steadicam. Okay. So he's able to, at this time, this is 71, he's making this in 70, he's able to take the camera places where it had never been. And he would go on to later even better perfect that, like the scene in The Shining where, Jack Nicholson is doing the door, and there's that great shot, right? Well, and it's in this movie, too, when you're looking down at her breasts and Alex is reaching up, right? That kind of stuff you didn't see in movies till Kubrick did it. And in this movie, he fucking just is like, let's go down to the floor with this. Like, he's on the floor when the guy's struggling through the Singing in the Rain scene, right? Like, there's so many amazing angles that he's like, wow, let me see if I can get a camera in here. And keep in mind, a camera at this point in time is a camera, right? Like, it's a fucking camera. So he's doing those kind of things that are revolutionizing camera technology. One of those things he does in this movie, where he does this more in this movie than he does in any of his other movies, is he zooms in and out, which is taboo in Hollywood. You don't zoom. Zooming is amateur. That's what you do on television to whip pan in on a laugh, right? Kubrick goes, no. I want my camera exactly where I want it. I want this shot because I want to be able to go in and out. And his slow zooms in and out become later something that we use in other film to build tension. But we learned it from Kubrick, right? You see this so many times in this movie where he's like zooming in and out on Alex as maybe treatment's happening or, this, that, or the other thing.
Well, the first shot of the movie is that zoom out when they're in the club and he's just staring at the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Two other things that don't necessarily appear as much in this movie, but Kubrick was such a crazy person, okay, that he invented lenses, essentially. So he had the same DP the entire way through A Space Odyssey until the last year of shooting, okay, because the guy was booked on another job. So his assistant took over as the main DP. The entire time through A Space Odyssey, that DP is telling Kubrick, no, I'm not doing that. No, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. Because it's breaking what normally you would do on a movie set or what the camera technology is capable of. Well, the new guy, just an assistant, doesn't want to tell Stanley fucking Kubrick no, right? So he goes to Kodak, and he starts asking all these questions. Well, what can I do this? Can I do this? Da-da-da-da. That guy then becomes the DP for all the rest of the movies and has an Oscar trophy case at his house because of it. But he invents a zoom lens that works with a film camera. He invents so the zoom lens existed, right, but it wasn't formatted for a film camera. They got it formatted for a film camera. But a zoom lens only went from 25 to 45. And Kubrick goes, no. I got to get right in on his glasses. So that is where that 72 to 105 lens that I think we are all very familiar with in photography, right, that big long one that's in a lot of people's bags, that's Kubrick.
Wow.
Fucking revolutionary shit. And all of it is in this movie at one point or another.
Well, it's interesting, too, that this movie is not thought of as one of his more technical masterpieces, right? You think of 2001 is probably number one.
Yes.
And then Shining is up there for sure.
Practical effects on both of them, yes.
Yeah, and this one is not really thought about that way. And when I was watching it, I didn't notice a ton of the techniques. I definitely noticed the zooms, which, like Josh said, you don't see those in Hollywood too much anymore. You see a lot of these big sweeping crane, jib and all these crazy movements because the camera can go anywhere. You don't really need to just go straight in and out anymore. That's not really a thing that people do unless you're an auteur trying to kind of make a name for yourself. But so yeah, it's interesting that you noticed all of that in this movie, which I don't really think is one of his more well-known, technical masterpieces.
It's not, and I think the best part of it for me, as the reason I'm blabbing on is because I'm the production guy, right? Amongst all of us, I'm the production guy. And so I did not even realize how much my work was impacted by Kubrick until now. So I did a very, very, very similar, literally it was a Kubrick homage and I didn't even fucking know it. So I set the camera all the way back, and this was a project I did in college, and I had a food fight between two people wearing masks. We're already in Kubrick land when you put the masks on. Food is a huge thing in Kubrick movies. If you notice, during a lot of monologue scenes, the main characters are eating. It's just a thing. So I'm doing a slow zoom in on a food fight between two people in masks playing Beethoven. Literally, it was a Kubrick, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah. It sounds like it. That's crazy.
So, as much as I maybe hated this movie, and I think it is, even though I've never seen any of the other ones, I think this is probably the worst of his collection. This is his Jackie Brown, if we're doing a Tarantino reference, right?
I did think about that earlier because I'm like, there are people who love like Jackie Brown out
Right.
of Tarantino's movies,
Right.
even though the general consensus is not that.
Right.
But
So-
I'm curious if you guys, any of the other guys on the show, noticed any production techniques that stood out to you, or if there were any that you guys had like noticed that you had done in your life, whether it was like, you know, a way that you took pictures that was similar to this, or just any of those aspects that stood out to you. Because you guys, I don't think are all, you know, like Josh and I went to production school, but you guys don't have that background, but it's still something.
Zach's a photographer.
Okay, so yeah, so it's interesting to see though how other people read that stuff who aren't like trained to, or you know, like not accustomed to. So Zach, I mean, you want to start? Like, was there anything in this movie that you thought of as like influencing yourself, or that stood out to you?
No.
Nice.
But I will say, yeah, no, I'm
all right.
Yeah.
Next
no,
topic.
No, there was nothing really about me watching it where I was like, ooh, technically or visually, this is very pleasing. But when we just rewatched that scene of them walking down along the water, very, I'm sure Tarantino might have borrowed that for Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
You know.
Tarantino loved Kubrick.
Yeah, but in regard to what you're saying, like I'm the same way. Like when I was still doing photography, where I loved things to be dead centered, and I loved things being symmetrical.
Well, and in your work, a lot, you use a wide angle lens and you get up close.
Yeah,
that's Kubrick.
Yeah,
Kubrick invented that.
That's true.
Like it's awesome. Like as a total nerd moment, like the things he did for camera work and camera technology. Like, it's not in this movie, but in Spartacus, he lights an entire dinner scene with just candles, okay? And they're like, we got to get a light in there. You can't see it. And he's like, well, you better make a camera that can see it. So he got his Zeiss lenses, which he was, you know, buddies with, and it was a 0.5 speed lens.
Jesus.
So for those of you who maybe don't understand that, a 2 is fast. A 1.5 is fast. 0.5 is, there's only one or two of those lenses in the world, and one of them is in the Kubrick Museum that travels the country.
That's crazy. And this was a time when the Alexa camera did not exist, and that is a digital camera that now can do very low lighting and have very fine quality, and it's a very popular camera nowadays.
You needed giant lights that would give people sunburn to light for film cameras in the 70s. Not with Kubrick.
Yeah. Austin, Derek, did you guys, any of those aspects from the production side kind of stand out to you, or just things that you had noticed maybe in other influential works, or just thought were interesting to see?
Austin, why don't you go first, buddy?
Yeah, that's fine. Not necessarily anything on my end. I would say that I did notice for this film how everything was essentially, you know, straight on as we had pointed out, but like scenes alone were like, I'll take for like I think it was like the scene in the hospital where like the nurse was walking down, like how everything was like just a straight path, and you like visually got the color and everything else going on. I was like, oh, that is crazy. It felt like almost like going through like a weird carnival ride of just different colors and aspects of everything that was going on. And then you had scenes like when the gang is walking before Alex essentially kicks the shit out of his two members, how that one scene, how everything is essentially, you know, put out in a white sense. And then you have whatever thing happens. I love that monologue with that scene and how the production was used for that. Those are the main two I got from this movie anyway. But as for me, I'm not much of a production guy, so I really don't have.
I didn't know that you were going to make fun of me for that, but all right.
No,
what Austin means to say is him and I have
Production
sex, so we can't really correlate with
That is
you,
true.
Josh.
I did not have a lot of sex in college while I was hyper focused on all this shit.
Well, you had good shorts, though. You had good short films.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was gonna say, well, good thing he has bird dogs now, because if you had bad shorts in college, I would be upset with you.
Yeah.
But I understand what you mean now. My production side of everything, if you watch any video I edit, it's extremely it's kind of like a baby learning human things. I'm like, holy fuck, I can put two of me on the same screen, but I'm talking to myself, like a Ryan Reynolds commercial. Like, this is great. So a lot of the things that I realize I'm doing, I then understand I wasn't the person that invented them, which is pretty shell-shocking. But the things that
Son of a bitch.
yeah. So like my thing is like a lot of the edits that I've made through my videos or whatever it is are very quick, very raw cuts. So not like that's why it bothers me when scenes are so long, is that I always look through everything in a way, how do I make it seem like there's this sense of humor and this sense of rawness to it, and that's by taking a bunch of clips that I know there's something there and cutting them in paths that are not they don't correlate. So when you were talking about how like you're taking that tricycle and you're on wood and then you're on carpet and it's a little off, I love that. I love the understanding that there's something not smooth about it that makes it like almost at ease for you. The things that I took from this movie that I can actually see in the way that I do things too, though, is very low shots. If I'm shooting anything, I like being low because it gives the person a sense of just being taller. Like that's just something logically that my brain went to. I was like, all right, if I shoot it lower, then whoever's in it, whether it's a picture or whatever, they are taller, they are bigger. So a lot of the stuff from him shooting from the ground on the still camera, I can be like, oh yeah, I do that.
So in that rape scene, right? To go back to our topic, there are three things that are in this that are just to kind of like go into it with you. So that long steady camera shot that's wide and you can see everything happening, right?
Yeah.
And then the next cuts are shaky cams, right? But they're looking down at the guy and they're looking up at Alex, right? You're looking down to create a sense of helplessness at the guy.
That's
up at Alex to create the power. And the idea of a tracking oneer is also something Kubrick fucking did. Those of you who are fans of Haunting of Hill House, the entire funeral episode where they're going around and around and around, they're going in and out of the house and in and out of the funeral, and it's all one big moving set piece, that doesn't even become a dream until Kubrick did it. That's how fucking influential this guy's work is on the people who make stuff now and made stuff that influence the people who are making stuff now.
Yeah.
So much so that literally the man, the GOAT, the guy who I will tell you to the day I die is the best director ever to walk face of fucking earth, Steven Spielberg, stopped working on projects because he did not want to interrupt what Kubrick was doing so Kubrick could get his movies out. That's how highly Spielberg thought of Kubrick.
I do want to cut you off. I want to say in the essence of time, I would like to hit the last category.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I
and
could
then
go on.
I would
my
like
own
to
podcast about
I think we can do the last topic and just do it as a yes or no. We can do
Sure.
our top 3 directors, and then we can do our
Are we doing directors?
Oh, I forgot about that.
I don't think
I don't
we
think,
were.
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
let's
we're
cut
gonna
it and
that
do
as a
another
separate
bigger.
show.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally
Yeah.
fine. So let's do the last topic, which Austin is.
Yeah, this is the greatest weirdest movie we've ever seen. Like, how can we word the fact of maybe a thing that we've never seen before going into this? Like, were we more weirded out of it, or were we like, holy shit, this is like really weird, but it's really good?
Yeah, I said James and the Giant Peach.
More of a Tim Burton-esque for you.
I don't think it's good. Again, I mean, as much as I just blushed over it, and I think we've had some really great deep conversations about the core of the movie and the motifs through it and all that kind of stuff, I still don't think this is a good movie. I think it's just a weird movie. I really do. I don't think this is his best. I don't think this is even a good weird movie. I think it's just a weird, crappy movie.
What is your greatest weird movie?
Greatest weird movie? I mean, James and Giant Peach, oddly enough, is a great example.
Yes.
I really do think it is, because it is fucking bizarre, right? Any Edward Scissorhands.
Is that your goat? Weird movie.
I would like to think a little bit more about it as far as a
You
goat
can't.
weird movie.
You gotta fucking
Off
answer
the
right
top
now.
of my head, movie that's fucking bizarre but is amazing.
If you take mine, I'll kill you.
I'm gonna go Nightmare Before Christmas.
I'll allow it. Yeah, no, I thought this movie sucked. I didn't like it. It was very weird. It was very weird, but not in a way where I was like, because there are certain movies that are fucking weird, like The Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, that you're like, that was different.
Mm-hmm.
This just was. It wasn't necessarily different, you know. It was just.
Are you saying giant bugs that live in a peach and travel to New York is not weird?
Did you hear what I said?
You weren't listening.
You weren't listening.
Active
I don't know.
listening.
I don't give a fuck.
No, I love James and the Giant Peach. I tried to rewatch it and I couldn't because it like just like freaked me out. Like it gave me like I remembered watching it as a kid and I was like, when I was younger, this was okay because it was just wild and different.
Yeah, I would have fucked that
But
spider
now
up.
I was just, you would have what?
I would have fucked that spider up.
Oh.
Yeah, not fucked the spider.
Oh, wow.
She got a donk, though.
You see the thorax on that bitch? I don't even know that's the right part of
What
spider.
an exoskeleton.
Yeah. But no, I didn't like it. But my greatest weird movie of all time, I guess maybe just my favorite, is probably The Lighthouse.
See, I literally, I got done with A Clockwork Orange and was like, well, I'm already fucked up today. Might as well watch this and put it on, and I couldn't do it. I
That's
was
come
like,
up
"Oh,
so
I'm
many
out."
times in the show. I think that's come up every show we've done. Someone has mentioned The Lighthouse the
Lighthouse?
past 4 weeks.
I mean,
feel
it's
like, yeah.
Good.
It's
Watch it.
making a lot of noise.
Don't tell, no, the NBA draft's on. Don't yell at
Crazy
me.
one. Is it the greatest, weirdest movie we've ever seen? No. I don't, because honestly, I don't think it's all that weird. I know that you guys weren't
Ooh.
into it, but I mean, as far as 70s cinema goes, this is just part of the trend of the 70s, and I think that the way it's presented is so different from movies today that it seems a lot weirder than it really is. And the subject matter is definitely a little bit, you know, like Alex's psychology and everything is definitely a little bit further down the beaten path. But I don't think in the grand scheme of movies, examining his character over the course of the movie is the weirdest thing we've seen, but nor is it the greatest thing. Like we talked about, this is probably middle of the road for Kubrick's canon, so I think that question is an easy no for me. I really like your answer to Edward Scissorhands for greatest weirdest movie.
I think that's
yeah. My Johnny Depp love aside and the whole Tim Burton connection and everything, I just think that's like the embodiment of a really great but truly
just
weird, bizarre. I mean, yeah, Tim Burton would naturally be in that conversation. But
yeah.
I like that answer. But.
Okay.
So for me, I would say also that it's not the greatest, weirdest movie I've ever seen. I actually enjoyed this movie more than I would say I enjoyed it more than you guys did, just because
that's fair.
That whole like dystopian weird ass
You are a
shit
weirdo.
that goes on in the back of people's minds that nobody really likes to talk about. But I would say my two probably top weirdest movies. One, I can't believe how this hasn't been mentioned yet. Donnie Darko.
Yep, that's up there. That's for sure up there.
And one to me that might seem weird to me just based on the character presence of the guy. But it's funny enough how Jake Gyllenhaal stars in both these movies. Nightcrawler.
I didn't see Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler's very good.
It's very good.
It's very good. He's just a weird man. It's like, I was like, normal people don't act this way. Like, this is just fucked up.
That's a great character study, that movie. Tony Gilroy. Yeah. Nightcrawler, yeah, very excellent movie. Derek, what do you think?
I loved Nightcrawler. I thought it was a great movie. I don't know. It's not. It's fucking. This movie's weird as fuck. Like, it's weird to put this movie into any category that makes it the greatest of something. Like the greatest weird movie ever. Just I don't know. You thought Nightcrawler was that weird, Oz?
It's the greatest movie with orange in the title.
So
no, Orange is the New Black is a show.
Interesting.
I said movie.
Derek, I'll say Nightcrawler's weird just based on the design of Jake Gyllenhaal's character. How he essentially condones himself with everything, how he doesn't think like a normal person, and just how he presents himself. Like, he's very
better
business forward, but in the end, he's just kind of a sociopath.
Yeah. There's a lot of movies called Orange. There's a movie called The Oranges. There's one called The Annoying Orange. There's one is Orange is the New Black, which is a movie, but it's a crime. That doesn't count. Clockwork Orange is number 8 on a list of top movies all time with Orange in the
Orange
title.
County. That's a great movie.
Yeah, Orange County
is a good one. Maybe Rocky Horror Picture Show, Pan's Labyrinth.
Orange is definitely not in that title.
Rocky Horror's a good
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, all kind of belong in that weird, great category.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro is probably another director that would be any of his movies. You could argue for that. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about great, weird things and Orange, did any of you guys have to read the book Tangerine?
Yes,
in
I
high
love that
school?
movie so much. It's that book. It's one of my favorite books. In all seriousness,
How fucking weird!
terrible.
Is it? It's like almost.
It's a great book, terrible story for the sake of how it is. It's crazy.
I can't believe we like had to read that in like middle school. It's about this kid that like they beat him up and like spray orange
His
paint
brother.
like in his eyes and shit. And there's like a weird thing with shoe fly pie or
So
some
his
shit.
brother is a giant bully in the town, and they hold him down and they spray paint in his eyes. But they convince him, and the parents convince the kid because it was so young that he looked at an eclipse, and now he wears these special glasses, and he goes to one school and is playing soccer, and then he finds out that school's kind of like elitist, and ends up transferring to the shitty school, and he's a goalie for a soccer team, and like the whole concept is around that the shitty school, they're like farmers, and there's a frost where they have to save their tangerines, and he earns the captain's trust by doing that. But he also finds out that his brother and his brother's friend kill one of the guys he looks up to with like a giant, I think it said it's a lead block.
Yeah.
But it's a crazy book that I
Yeah.
gave a book report on in 6th grade. And I stood up in the class and was like going through this whole story, and everyone looked at me. And I was like 10 out of 10 and just like sat down.
I was reading Captain Underpants.
Yeah, it was crazy. Also, I want to bring up the fact that I thought I brought up OBS and I brought up Twitch, and my face did something that I didn't do, and I pissed myself.
Oh.
Oh gosh.
Dystopian future. All right, let's get through these actors.
Whoa.
This is gonna be.
This
I
is
think it's gonna
actually
go
the
fast.
4 of our favorite segments, so we're not just gonna get through
Oh,
it,
I'm so
Josh.
sorry.
We're gonna have a good fucking time and
We
do
don't
it.
know any of these fucking actors.
Any
though.
Tim Burton
Let's be honest.
movie could be weird, I guess. My favorite is Ed Wood.
Well,
Ed
you
Wood is
definitely.
a fantastic
I didn't see
fucking
Ed Wood.
movie.
If we're gonna read Roland's comments, let's read them right.
I'm sorry.
Any Tim Burton movie could be weird, I guess. My favorite is Ed Wood.
What's the one above that?
Midsummer. Weird movie to keep you up at night. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Weird
Yep.
movie to make you feel like you dropped some acid. Northern Texas accent. What the fuck is Northern? Howdy, partner. Any Tim Burton movie is weird, I guess.
Fucking
I
Sandy
got.
Cheeks over here.
Yeah, right.
All right, Malcolm McDowell, Justin.
This is Alex.
Overrated or underrated? Yeah, I think it's just more interesting that this is Alex. Like, I was trying to figure out, like, I was looking at him, and I'm like, I feel like this guy's became a famous actor, and Malcolm McDowell is like a very posh, like he's got a very posh British.
I thought it was the
like,
guy in the chair.
Who's the guy in the chair?
No,
The
he's
guy in the
in
wheelchair.
Here. He's
I
in
know,
here.
but I
No,
thought
oh,
this
definitely
was.
not. Yeah.
This
Oh,
movie.
yeah, no.
This
No,
movie's
this
like
is
50
Alex.
years
That's
old.
Alex.
Yeah, but he, like he's like a well-dressed posh British guy who's in a ton of things. He's a great actor, classically trained British actor. He's fantastic, and I think everybody knows him. He's probably fairly rated. I'm not saying he's like the greatest person you never heard of, because everybody's seen him in something. So.
Yeah, I would say going back to the whole weird movie thing and his voice, I thought I was so confused because I knew the face wasn't right, but the voice was very similar to Richard O'Brien, who is Riff Raff in Rocky Horror. And I was like, wait a minute, like that's not the fucking face.
All I can,
Holy
I'm just,
shit.
the beginning of Time Warp is playing
Yeah.
through my head right now.
Like when he's like, Master, he's escaped to
Yeah.
the castle grounds.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. But I would say that he
Because
might-
he says narrator a lot, because he is the narrator of Rocky Horror Picture.
Yep.
No, the detective is. The detective's
Okay,
the
all right,
narrator for
all right.
Rocky Horror.
This dude is like the greatest voice actor in video game history at this moment. Just to let everyone here know, if you're unaware, he's the voice in almost all the Oblivion franchise games. He's Dr. Monty in Call of Duty Black Ops 3. He's riddled with voice. I mean, Scooby-Doo across the board. He was in Phineas and Ferb. I enjoy when there's actors that have legitimate pedigree that do voice. Like, I think finding out Mark Hamill was the greatest Joker of all time was one of the cool. I mean, obviously, but was one of the coolest things I've ever.
It
been a part of.
definitely was. Like, when you found that out,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, shit.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So
He's fine, fairly rated.
fairly
Agreed.
rated.
Yeah.
I would say underrated maybe just for that, but also I loved him in Star Trek Generations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out Soren.
Austin?
Yeah, fairly rated, I would say. The main one is kind of shitty, but the main, like, I knew he did all the video game voices and everything, but, like, the main movie I associated him, aside from this one, was Dr. Loomis in Rob Zombie's Halloween remake.
Oh,
So-
you
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, that's right.
Derek.
I'm gonna say overrated based on the fact that I just saw that, and it just reminded me he's in Entourage too. So
Yeah,
he peaked it.
Terrence.
Yeah, and
That's the first
when
thing I
you
thought of when
Stare
we
at
were-
him,
yeah.
and I'm like, I know that. No, I thought he was great. Great for what he was given. So properly.
Cool.
Who the fuck is this
That's
guy?
the Pink Panther.
So
No,
this
it's
is
not.
this is the guy.
No,
This is Michael Bates. Okay, so Michael Bates is fascinating to this movie 2 times. First off, he is the drill instructor kind of guy who's torturing Alex, trying to reform him.
How the fuck do you know his name?
because it said it on the screen.
Oh, God bless.
And then here's the fun little trivia fact is that it's his wife who comes on stage that Alex resists touching.
Oh God.
Oh my God, he's so underrated for allowing that to happen.
Yeah, right. He's so well, and when they cut to him in that scene, he's the one that's like, so like it just knowing that now just like adds to that.
She's hot. My guy.
Yeah,
Michael Bates.
Yeah, you get it, Michael Bates.
All right, good for you, Michael Bates. As an actor, I have no
Didn't
idea.
Fucking care.
I don't know who this guy is.
Nope,
I
don't care at all. Just a really hot wife.
He's whatever. I don't know.
I saw he was in No Sex Please, We're British.
Oh.
So
the classic.
The classic.
Yeah.
No.
You know,
Sex
he was
Please.
Mr. Needham in the 1973 No Sex Please, We're British.
He needs ham.
A porn
not
star
sex.
owner, Pete, orders some new stuff for his supplier, Nico, but Nico mixes
Oh,
up the
Nico.
addresses and drops it at the bank.
Interesting.
Oh, classic.
All right, next week?
Austin, do you have a take on Mr. Bates here?
Yeah, no, this is kind of the first film I ever knew he was in, so I can't really go judge him based off of that.
Sure.
I looked on his filmography and none of the really other things lash out at me. So
Okay. Next one. Patrick McGee.
You know
Maniac McGee.
Nope, that's Kubrick.
I know, I was just doing that because you jumped the gun.
Oh, sorry.
I lead the show, damn. No, I don't. Who is this guy?
Guy in the wheelchair.
Yeah, that's the guy in the wheelchair.
Ah, okay, cool. He was cool.
Um,
Kind of a little bitch, but he was cool.
Don't know what else he was in.
he's fairly. I think he is not as well known as Michael McDowell, but he's been in some stuff. At least that's the way everybody was like. He's pre this movie, obviously, because he's kind of towards the.
He hasn't done anything since '82.
Right.
He
He's
probably
probably
died
dead.
then.
Probably
yeah.
dead.
Okay, that's an
I will
excuse.
say, ironically, going back to Deacon me on the last one, I thought he was the Inspector Clouseau's boss in the Pink Panther franchise, and I was like, oh yeah, and then it wasn't. And I was
And then
like,
it
back the
wasn't. And I was
fuck
like,
this
ah,
guy.
shit.
I have an appreciation for anyone that does Shakespeare.
Yeah.
It appears he did King Lear. Isn't that Shakespeare? Or am I crazy?
Yeah. No, you
Yeah.
got it.
He was in Thriller
right.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in A Clockwork Orange.
Oh,
why.
shit,
Is
that's
that
where
King
we
Lear
know him from.
again?
Yeah. What's
I
that?
don't know
Russ?
why this guy made me feel that he was the. For some reason, I thought he was the old guy in the wheelchair in Breaking Bad. I don't know why that made me think of him that way, but
It was the
I guess
chair.
the scowl of his lip.
If they just gave him a hologram, just 50 years in the future, yeah. It
Did
was the
anybody
chair.
have an opinion about his performance? No.
No.
No. All right.
It was good for what it was, yeah.
Sure.
And then the director himself, Stanley Kubrick.
I feel like he's he's underrated in this chat right now.
Yeah.
Like of the five of us, he's definitely a super underrated. I think in general among cinephiles in the community, I think he's fairly rated as being a genius of unmatched proportions.
I
but
saw a list today that had him as the greatest director ever.
He's considered to be
top
up
5.
there. Yeah,
is
I mean,
generally
In his
where I found
defense,
him.
though, I do not believe Vince Lombardi would be the greatest coach in the NFL today, but Vince Lombardi paved the way for every coach to know how to coach, is how I will word Kubrick. Kubrick, standing up to today's standards that we talked about 50 years, it's super weird, but the dude also revolutionized, based on what I heard today, the entire game of filming. So I will give him the credit that the offense that Vince Lombardi ran at the Packers would not work in today's NFL, but at the same time, there would be no today's NFL without that offense.
If I could readjust it
If this
for
is
you,
about hockey, I will fucking fight you out in the parking lot.
is that Lombardi is Hitchcock.
Damn, I thought you were gonna make it about hockey. No. Okay. Well, that's a discussion for another day. I agree
Lombardi's
with that,
Hitchcock as the guy who taught it. Hitchcock walked so everybody could run.
Sure.
Yeah.
I could-
You flush one toilet and you're
Yeah.
the greatest of all time.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, so fairly rated in general, underrated in thoughts from the movies.
Yes.
But
Great way to put
what
it.
do you guys? What do you guys think?
Love that.
I'll say he's underrated. Just I mean, after I watched that, Room 237 documentary, and he's doing social commentary on the way Native Americans were treated by the way he adjusts cans and shots of pantries and shit. I was just like, this is next level. I mean, just like complete mastery of the medium. So
Austin?
Yeah, it's a little between fairly and underrated, and the reason for that being is that I like this film more than the average person. But he did one of my all-time favorites in The Shining, and I can't let that like go untouched for that specifically.
Sure.
I would like to add on the last comment of the night that we'll read. Kubrick being the best director is kind of like how Citizen Kane is considered the best movie of all time. It's based on technique and film theory he came up with, which I can get behind. But there are many directors that I enjoy more. #more, asterisk, or #there, asterisk, there. But yeah, I agree. And Justin, I do feel bad for like not enjoying the first movie that I knew was by this guy until I realized that The Shining was by him.
Right.
Because I understand what an impact this gentleman has had on the industry, and I think that gives me a new appreciation for The Clockwork Orange. And if that's any saving grace, it makes me like look at the movie and be like, all right, maybe I just didn't enjoy it because I wasn't aware of certain things that make sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I felt about it. It's like I wasn't really personally into the movie, but I like appreciate that it's Kubrick, and it's like, okay.
It's like when your artist drops an album that you're like, this wasn't that good, but it's still like I can really appreciate it.
Definitely, yeah.
Houses of the Holy wasn't that great, but it had a couple bangers on it.
Houses of the Holy?
Is that a Post Malone album?
Wow.
Yeah.
You love Post Malone, first off.
It's not Post Malone. It's goddamn fucking Led Zeppelin, and his pen won't come over here.
It's close. It's like almost Post Malone.
It's okay, guys. I muted his mic. Anyways, this was Thought.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Justin, you want to lead us out?
Yeah, that's it for another episode of Thoughts from the Movies. Very controversial episode tonight for a controversial movie, A Clockwork Orange. But we had some great conversation, some really interesting topics. We had oranges in the studio. We talked about rape. I mean, it was everything you could imagine a show like ours would be.
I don't want you to not think I took this serious, but I made this.
During the show.
Some would say.
Nice.
It's up for discussion. Roland says, great show, guys. Thank you, Roland.
Thanks for chiming in, Roland. Another great show. I appreciate you boys all being here. I have no idea what's going on next week, but we'll figure it out. And it will be Wednesday at 8 o'clock, whatever it is, on another episode of Thoughts from the Movies.